Right. I drive there every day. So you did? Does he use their recovery pretty short? Yeah, he did that. I don't care. Come home. I'll order the meeting of the City of St. John's Commission. We'll begin with an invocation, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please bow your heads. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business, and we thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Give us a spirit of service, reminding us that we are stewards. We ask for guidance and wisdom to help us engage in meaningful discussion, allowing us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Help us to act with character and conviction, to listen with understanding and goodwill, to be open to others' ideas and beliefs, and to speak with charity and restraint. Working together, may we find common ground and move forward with shared purpose. Guide us to be the leaders our community needs. In your name we pray. Amen. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I know what he would do it. Black everything.
Lead every seat.
I know, that's exactly what I just said too. We talked about that.
We've got a new leader.
Got the booming voice.
Yeah.
Let's begin with our consent agenda this evening. On the consent agenda this evening, we have approval of minutes of our special meeting from January 27th, 2025, and the regular meeting of January 27th, 2025. Receipt of warrants in the amount of $1,706,957.01. And then we also have item C, the police department PACE scheduler proposal. Questions on the consent agenda this evening?
Motion to approve.
It's been moved by Heiser. Is there support? It's been seconded by Huffnagel that we adopt the consent agenda. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Continuing on then, approval of the agenda. I've got a couple changes I'm going to request throughout here. Under item B, public hearings, we have none. Item C, we have two presentations, badge pinning ceremony followed by our master plan presentation. That'll be followed by public testimony. Communications, we have none this evening. Under old business, we have resolution 10 of 2025. That is to amend our noise control ordinance. Item 2 is resolution 11 of 2025 addressing landscape standards. Item 3 is resolution 12 of 2025 regarding accessory structures. Item 4 is resolution 13 of 2025 regarding height requirements for corner lots. Item 5 is resolution 14 of 2025. This is ordinances regarding general exceptions for corner lots. Item 6 is resolution 15 of 2025 This amends chapter 155 Code of Ordinances regarding supplementary regulations for keeping of animals. Continuing on then in new business, I am going to request that we bump up items, item 5 to item 1, which is going to be the quarterly budget presentation. I'm requesting that item 2 then be the new addition that was distributed over the weekend in regards to the BS&A payments. Next item will then be the approval of the capital improvement plan, followed by the Fantasy Forest Playground installation, followed by the 2025 street millage improvements, followed by the compost site proposal, followed by city manager comments, and then commissioner comments. Additions or changes to the agenda? Commissioner Gursky.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add an item if I could.
Yes.
Again, a resolution to adopt freeze and wages and commission a comprehensive wage study, please.
Okay.
That item.
We actually set that up, I think probably makes more sense as we're doing the budget pieces, earlier on. Can we make that, we'll have that follow approval of capital improvement plan? I think it just makes sense to put all the budget pieces together, unless there's objection to that. Other changes to the agenda? Motion would be in order to adopt the agenda as amended. So moved by Heiser, supported by Huffnagle, that we adopt the agenda as amended. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Continuing on, I believe we're gonna start with our badge printing, badge pinning ceremony. Chad, you wanna kick this off, and then we will jump into the commission.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commission. This is the kind of an official start of a very long process that the city has embarked on for the past 3 or 4 months. We have been led by Jordan Whitford, the prior fire chief, did a tremendous job of raising the department up to a level where it has very high standards. We are expanding the fire chief position to a full-time position for the first time in the city. And so that will allow the fire chief to both do code inspection, as zoning inspection, as well as become a full-time fire chief. And we're very proud to have him aboard. The competition that he was part of was the most competitive that I had seen in my brief 32-year municipal career. So he's a leader of a very competitive pack, and we are very lucky to have him as our brand new fire chief, and excited to have someone pin him very delicately here to become the city's official fire chief. So would invite his family and friends to come on up and officially add him as the new fire chief for the city of St. John's.
Quick family picture. Yeah.
Invite the commission to come down and do a picture.
Chief Douglas, you want to introduce your family and guests?
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, you guys can sit down. So up with me, was my wife Beth, and then our youngest son Bentley. My oldest son Preston, my mother-in-law Dina. Captain Tom Stone from DeWitt Fire, his wife Betty, his son Michael Stone, who's a firefighter EMT for Grand Traverse Fire. One of my best friends, Daryl Burge, he's a firefighter paramedic for Livingston Township. In the back is my grandma, Louise, and then my mother Heidi. And over here, one of my best friends, Jake Shive, who is firefighter EMT, among many other things, at Bath, and then his wife Stephanie. So I believe Chief Todd Henny's in the back, from Lansing Township Fire, and then several members from our department.
Well, welcome family, congratulations, Chief Douglas,
Thank you.
welcome aboard, we got a chance to meet you at our last meeting, but, we'll do the proper ceremony now. Thought it'd be nice to get a picture with commission and certainly, invite, fire personnel that are here for a picture as well.
See where you want.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I think later.
Almost.
We'll do a commission picture. You want a commission picture first? Let's do a commission and then we'll bring you in and then we'll.
We'll do the shape. We can. All right, great. Very good. Let's bring the fire crew in. We'll bring them their workers as well. Big little. Adaptability.
You're all right.
I want to stand up in the back.
No.
You want a picture with the crew then?
Yeah,
too?
we can do that.
We'll do that.
Yeah, sure.
No, we're good with the crew.
Congratulations and welcome aboard.
Absolutely, thank you. You're all more than welcome here today. That's right, that's right.
I bring my daughter back in.
Yeah, that's right. Commentary, yeah. Continuing on, Chris is here, yeah. Chris, next up is our, review of the master plan, so we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, commissioners. There is a visual presentation. Should we get that going?
Sorry, I'll print them all off, but it.
Oh, sorry. Is it this of you?
You have to,
Do you need a few minutes? Yeah, I think she is. If it's okay, then, while we're waiting, we can probably, open it up for public comment for any persons, wishing to provide testimony this evening. As we always indicate, there is a form, in the back of the room on giving public comment, good guidelines. We give people 3 minutes, to present. We always suggest, have 1 minute. I'll hold up a sign, just to let you know your time is, coming to an end. And if you do come forward, please raise your hand and, we'll ask you to come up if you could just introduce yourself and where you reside. Is there anyone this evening for public testimony?
You guys have to come up and talk.
It won't take long, I know it would, I figured we'd get that one done. Anyone for public testimony? Public testimony? There being none, we had a full crowd for the chief, so. We'll give Christina a second longer.
oh, he's got it.
Oh, we're almost done with that, great.
You just blink, it might turn that one off at the same time. If it doesn't work, it's good stuff.
What else can I say, do we, if we want to, if there's. While we're giving Chris a couple minutes, if there's not objection, we can jump into some of our old business to keep things moving and then, come back to Chris if that works. Oh,
Here we go.
and as I say that, here it comes though.
All right. Thank you, Tex Moore.
Thank you.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to present some of the progress that the planning commission has made on the master plan update. Let you kind of know where we're at in the process and how, what we have left to do, and then how the commission is going to be involved going forward. Also looking for, potentially reaction to some of the policy stuff that the planning commission is working on, though. It's their job obviously to dive really into the weeds. Those, serve on both boards, so there's quite a bit of feedback. So tonight we're gonna talk about 4 different things. We're gonna talk about future land use, we're gonna talk about redevelopment of some key areas in downtown. I wanna talk about housing capacity, which is something on the everyone's talking about now with the housing market. And how we have done some analysis to try to get some numbers on that, and wrap our heads around what really are our responsibilities as far as expanding housing supply, and then mobility. One thing we'll see on here is a map showing that frankly, St. John's is not that big of a place, and most things people are trying to get to in town are in walking and biking distance of each other. So if we give folks the infrastructure to do that safely, there are lots of opportunities in that area. Of course, mobility also includes traffic safety and parking and things of that nature, so we'll address that as well. First, future land use. The planning commission took a look at a couple different spots in the city where development has gone in a little different direction than maybe we envisioned 5 years ago when the master plan had its full rewrite. The first one is northeast corner of the city in the Searles Estates neighborhood. And it was kind of the boundary between the residential that comes off Gibbs and the industrial that comes off Walker Road up there. Previous master plan, you see, or currently on the books master plan, you see the gray, that's industrial land. Or industrially planned land, most of it is actually vacant right now. Planning commission is proposing to switch that to residential, as well as increasing the density along Joyce Drive, where we already have some multifamilies, duplexes, and some commercial land. So this would mean that the residents in that area would no longer be at risk of having a big factory come into their north or behind them. Instead, that would be residential, and then the dividing line with the industrial would be Walker Road. The next spot that the town planning commission has discussed quite a bit is Townsend Road. You see the current future land use here, that beige color is single family. Which means that most of our growth zones in the southern part of the city where we have vacant land that is in the city limits and served by infrastructure, is zone single family, so that's the kind of growth that we would get. That's the kind of housing we would build. Just to note quickly, the purple line that you see kind of zigzagging through there is the boundary of what we call the joint planning area. While that area is in the city limits, it is planned in conjunction with Bingham Township and Clinton County. Because then there's an area on the other side of the line that's in Bingham, that is joint plan where the city gets to say. This is something that was enacted in the previous master plan, and we intend to carry that forward. Anyway, that's the current map. The proposed new map has a couple of changes. One is just correcting Cedar Creek Hospital, which is designated as single family, and that's obviously inaccurate. So that is now blue as public institutional on this map. There are also a couple of land use corrections where we have existing multifamily, which is the orange.
Well,
Those have been filled in,
thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
and then, yeah,
The one next to the pink,
right there,
Yes,
that turn brown, that's a church.
yes.
So
And I was gonna get to that in a second.
Go.
So the condos along Glastonbury, who I was talking about, in terms of on the east there. And then at the bottom of Glastonbury Drive right now, there's vacant land that is zoned multifamily. So we would put that in the multifamily category, the church. The planning commission's thought process there was that in the event that church leaves, which is not imminent, that land is going to be hard to develop as single family simply because of the very small number of houses you fit on it. Which would be something like 8 to 10, which is not tiny, but maybe with an interested developer. And allowing that to be a different housing typology under R2 or R3 zoning, could actually be positive. Now, given the discussion about 450 Townsend at this level recently, which is very close by, we may want to revisit that. So if there's direction from the commission, the city commission, to the planning to revisit that, we definitely.
Chris, under this revised map, how is 450 Townsend zone or suggested plan?
Right now, 450 Townsend is, you can't see my cursor, it's right here.
Yeah.
And so the plan calls it out as what it calls modern spacious residential, which means new construction, single family.
Yeah.
Or recent construction, single family. And you can see the category right under that, one is traditional walkable residential, which would be more for the core, historic core of the city. So it does call it out as single family right now, R1 zoning, which is its current zoning. So there is a 1-to-1 match on the future land use zoning right now without making any changes. And that is the direction that we heard from this body previously. So we continue to move that in that direction unless we hear otherwise. You will also note on this map that the right of way that runs through that, the undeveloped right of way that runs through that property is shown on this map as this white right here. Next portion. Is the area north of downtown. So this is the former FC Mason facility or mobile facility, as well as the trail corridor, former rail corridor. And this area has been the discussion of a lot of planning. Obviously, we had student planners work on this. The previous master plan talked a lot about it. And this plan will talk a lot about it because it is the area of the city that has a lot of potential for change in the future. This is how it's currently laid out. The pink is flexible redevelopment, which basically says, we're not sure which direction this is gonna go. It could go industrial, because that's what the land uses are now. It could go mixed use, more like the downtown. It could go residential, more like the neighborhoods around it. And, so it leaves that open-ended and allows that to be determined by a future planning commission and future developers and properties. The purple is the downtown edge mixed use category, so that's obviously not your core of your downtown, but your edge, allowing for housing, allowing for retail, allowing for office, and even some sort of light industrial stuff, but really aiming at that housing and retail. So that's the current map. Now, the planning commission is proposing to change the map to this, which would give some areas more prescription, particularly on the trail, and say this is in the future going to be an extension of the downtown, not an industrial area. Now, many of these areas are industrial now. And there is no imminent idea of trying to push those businesses out. As long as businesses are there, they're a welcome part of the community and valued. However, if they were to leave, the property came for sale, the opportunity would exist for a developer to buy that and turn it into mixed use. You do still see some pink here, so there's still some areas where we aren't exactly sure. We have kept the FC Mason facility there because, well, we have some hopes going forward. We need to keep our options open in the master plan. You also may notice that Lansing Street on the west end of this little inset has switched from purple mixed use to the pink flexible redevelopment. That's because the interest we have seen in development along Lansing Street is mostly light industrial. Small engine repair, contractors yards, that kind of thing, because the market is sort of speaking there. We're not really all the way to go to industrial and say this will never be anything else, especially with the residential around it, but that does give the opportunity for that type of business to come in. Any questions or further direction on future land use? Future land use. Would you like us to revisit at the planning commission this site on Townsend Road?
For the church.
Yeah, where the church is. To eventually dial it back to, single family or something like that, understanding that this is future, so what happens if the church is in there?
Any thoughts there?
I don't think the church is leaving, so,
Sure.
I mean,
As a general rule, I generally recommend that churches and, well, churches in particular, be designated as something for the future, just in case the church goes away, understanding that it may be 50, 100 years from now. But you don't want to get caught in a situation where a church wants to sell, and they say, what can we sell it for? And you say, this is a church. And that may not be the highest and best use.
Just one question, the diagram on all those terms, is that in our current master plan? So if I was to look up, you know, what could go under community commercial, that's in the current master plan now?
It is, there is a chart in the current master plan.
That's fine.
That basically says, if it says this is future land use, these are your zoning options.
Okay.
And it might not be, there may be more than one zoning option that would be appropriate, but if there is a chart that shows that. Some of these tie to county zoning because they only exist out in township. Particularly the agriculture energy one, which is where in Allen Township you have farm fields that are being targeted for solar. That's where that is called out. None of that is in the city limits. Just for instance. So redevelopment, so we're gonna get into some more detail here about the north side of downtown, the trail area in particular, park, depot, et cetera. So our design team is taking a look at some of these options, taking into account some of the student work, et cetera. And look at what could potentially happen, especially if we shop some of the city-owned property to a developer. Or made some infrastructure investments like reconnecting the grid where we have undeveloped rights of way. What you're looking at here takes a lot of the old industrial and turns it into housing. And it takes a chunk of the vacant land east of the depot and turns it into housing. As well as potentially redeveloping the fifth block. Up north of Ross Street, where you have some retail, some housing, as an extension potentially of the downtown. That's a little more aspirational. This also envisions removing the silos, which is something we want strong direction on from the commission, if you guys have consensus on. I know that there's been times in the past where it's like, hey, let's use this as a landmark or something like that, but I know that it feels like this chance are shifting towards, let's get rid of them, make it more park space. That is potentially an option. I'll also call your attention, to the packet I passed out. This is hot off the presses today, from one of our designers back in McKenna. An idea was floated at the planning commission meeting, that as part of an RFP to seek developers for some of this land, we look to relocate the trail from the old rail corridor a half block south to Railroad Street. The purpose of doing that would be to open up the land as a more coherent development site that might be more attractive. So instead of trying to recruit a developer for half a block, it'd be for the whole block, with the caveat that they move the trail so that they can build the development they want. As you can see, the housing and mixed use that is now possible under this plan would, I think, lay out a little more coherently than it does up there, because the block is not split in half. You could have interior block parking, which would be difficult under what we see on the screen up there. And then as we move further east, you can see that we can get a bigger, more rectangular park space. So these are all positives. The big downside, of course, of doing this is if it ain't broke, we want to fix it. Right? The current trail is beloved and works really well. So, but this is something that could be, could be funded by a developer who may be able to monetize the site more if the trail is moved, and therefore might come out ahead financially while also being able to invest in our infrastructure. You can see in the packet a couple of visuals of what this would look like at street level. The other thing that I should mention here is this could potentially result in the removal of some of the parking on Railroad Street. in favor of the trail of trees being in that area. And this would all be the kind of thing we would need to negotiate internally and then with any developer as we move forward. Our plan is to put this in the master plan document as an option. So both what you see on the screen and what you have in the packets will be in the document, as possibilities. And if anyone in the public wants to see this, I do have extra copies here. You can take a look. Next thing.
Chris, on that trail move as we talked,
Yeah.
you've structured it out, really starting to make the turn at Lansing Street and knowing that full corridor. We've got a lot of vision here. We don't possess really that land, but we do have the land that, is what you frame here as Rotary Park. Is there any hesitation here, or anything that would prevent us from simply looping the trail, past the Veterans Memorial, right at Rotary there? We don't have to do it for that 3 blocks, we could do it for a shorter run too, couldn't we?
Yes, absolutely. This is definitely an option where you don't have to, it's not a, all
We're not locking this in.
yeah, it's not all or nothing. It can be done from a portion of the site. The only thing I would caution against is having to travel back and forth. Right, but if we said, look, it is true, there is a lot of city-owned land east of Clinton Avenue and also M-Down land that may be available in this scenario. Whereas west of Clinton Avenue is mostly privately owned except for the trail itself. So, yeah, it is possible that this scenario would happen as just after the Veterans Memorial, you cross the street, make a hard right, come down to Railroad Avenue. And circle around what is now a nice rectangular park, and then go into a new housing development to the east. That is definitely an option.
Okay.
We also have it cutting back up at Mead Street, and that is intentional because once you go 127, you have to go under. So,
Right.
there, you need to come up before that. Otherwise you're losing the overpass, which is a really nice amenity to have.
Absolutely. We're just giving this concept, yeah, we do. Thanks.
Yeah, the last thing I mentioned about this concept is, and this is maybe obvious, but the density and intensity increases as you get closer to Clinton Avenue, then decreases again as you go west to east. And we were also trying to do some light to light across Railroad Street, so where you have houses, the plan would be to put houses. And where you have, more downtown mixed use, the plan would be to put, multifamily or mixed use, or like townhouses or something. So speaking of housing. We did run, a housing analysis, we projected some population and housing needs out to 2040. The methodology is, in the draft master plan now, in quite a bit of detail in case anyone wants to look at it. But just to give the key takeaways, like everywhere else, we need housing of all types and at all price points. But it turns out that our biggest need is high-end housing. We also have a fairly significant need for extremely affordable housing. But that is going to be difficult to bring to market at the levels that it's being talked about. And we're talking very, very low rents, very low incomes, and that is an issue of, social programs and things like that, rather than an issue necessarily of land use planning. Not that we don't have to address the issue. But as far as land use planning goes, we're making some decisions about what should some of our vacant land or undeveloped agricultural land be being built on in the future. We currently have a situation in our housing market where the incomes of folks in St. John's kind of form a bell curve that looks like this, and the housing prices in St. John's form a bell curve that looks like this. So you have this clustering in the middle of the housing market, where the basically people at a wide range of the income spectrum are all buying housing for the same price. And for some folks, that's a real stretch and very difficult for them to afford. And for others, it's not a stretch at all. They could afford much more. And one way we can hopefully address that is if we get new luxury housing, the folks that can afford that will move out of existing units, freeing them up for other folks who maybe can't afford the brand new, but they can afford the existing. So that opportunity, is something that maybe should inform, say, our Townsend road planning, and probably goes into where you guys are talking about reforming Townsend and what kind of housing we want there. So So this is the kind of the bottom line number as far as projected housing need versus the future land use map. And the reason we do this is to make sure that we plan for enough housing and enough density in our future land use map. And as of right now, with the current draft, future land use, our projected housing need is just under 5,000 units by 2040. That's total, not additional, total housing. And our future land use map, if it was to be built out as drawn, would get us about 6,100 units. Now, we know not every single lot is being built out to its maximum density, but I think that gives us sufficient wiggle room, right? That if we don't build everything to maximum density, we can still hit that almost 5,000 number that we'll need, and feel pretty good about it. So I think this is something that is reassuring that we're on the right track. But it does say, and I've been telling a lot of communities this now, the way the housing market is, if you plan land for housing, it's likely to become housing. So the question is just what? Now, we're a city, we're surrounded by a rural township, and we've drawn, in the master plan, a growth boundary that is out in the township. So if we have undeveloped land and agricultural land left in the city, the plan is to build on it eventually. So understanding that, we have planned for sufficient housing. Is there any questions on that?
Mr. Mayor, just a question I didn't think of the planning commission meeting, but talking about how many units we need, how many units are there in St. John, Savannah Township currently?
Right now.
Well, I have that number, but I don't have it right in front of me. And I would have to take the presentation now, but maybe I can, find that for you.
Not gonna make a break for you, but I'd be interested in seeing what what we have now, what we're projecting as far as the expansion in population based on the housing units.
Like I said, I do have those numbers, they're just not on my screen right this instant.
So are you able to break it out by St. John's proper and in township?
Yeah, we definitely have that, I just don't have the number in my head.
Okay, yeah, that would be very.
So that is in the current draft, which takes you step by step to how we got those numbers, so if anyone's interested. It's not the most thrilling read, but it does give you the backstory, and it does have those breakdowns. So I can find that just now. So as far as mobility and transportation go. This is a map I mentioned earlier. It shows the parks, schools, medical facilities, specific uses, and some of the key commercial nodes. And then it shows how long it would take to walk and bike there from the center of town. And what's pretty cool about this map is that the widest circle is a 5-minute bike ride. So if you have a bike, you can get anywhere in St. John's. And the question is, can you get there safely? If you're looking for the answer, yes. But there are some key spots where it's difficult. I think we all know where they are, 127, of course, in numerous spots, some of the outlying roads and outlying areas, and some of the really busy spots, like around the high school. That's where you start to see some of these issues. This is what we call a corridor design plan. This is actually kind of like the future land use map for your roads. And this says, okay, what is this road primarily used for? And therefore, as we work on things like your CIP, how should we design this road for the users that use it primarily? The blue colors are your sort of regional thoroughfares, and that's really just old 127. For the most part, everything else that goes through town, including M21, the primary users of those roads are local St. John's. Now, M21 obviously has through traffic, but most of the traffic that you're seeing on it on a day-to-day basis is just people going across town. So, that gives you opportunities to prioritize not just cyclists and pedestrians who should be prioritized, but also things like residents who may want to park in front of their house. Which I know that's its own discussion, let's do snow plowing, all that, but that kind of thing. Or people who need to make turns, to turn into a business, to prioritize that rather than through, and not to, in terms of the design of the road. So, these are all things that these colors sort of point us towards, and the plan lays out how to prioritize based on the color scheme. This is a draft non-motorized plan. One thing it basically says is we need sidewalks on any road that does not have sidewalks, and this commission did adopt a much stronger sidewalks requirement. Planning Commission is now deep in implementation of that with some of the development proposals that we have coming before us. Including having to negotiate a little bit with some of the entities that are coming, including the county. But this map shows, hey, we've got a lot of sidewalk, we're missing some sidewalk, and that's where the new ordinance, safe routes to schools, et cetera. What you see in the blue is our existing bike paths, and what's kind of cool about that is we are working on a loop, right? We have one on Scott Road, we have one on Townsend, we have the minor trail. What we're missing is the western edge of that loop. And that, so you see the dotted blue line on the western edge of town, that is an opportunity to complete the loop. Running through the campus, the high school campus and the park. And then potentially along the ends of the dead end streets in the west end of town or something like that. All sort of aspirational at this point, but something that, we wanna put in the plan because it's a missing link, especially with the park and the high school going in that direction. We do have some bike lanes, but do we have the opportunity to do more? The last thing I point out on here is the dotted line running over 127. Now, the purpose of that is that we potentially have some excess right of way there. Now, it's not excess right now, but if you look at the way that road lays out, well, it sometimes gets as much as 6 or 8 lanes wide. And it does not have the traffic counts that it had before there was a highway and freeway bypass. We may be able to, in the future, work with MDOT to narrow that roadway, make it safer while keeping the capacity for cars. And then there'd actually be a lot of space, and that space could become another bike path. So that's why that's in. All right, moving forward to the next steps. We do have a full draft. It's been reviewed and come around by the planning commission, and now we're here on February 24th, second line down. After this, we are going to go out to some of our stakeholders. So Chad and I will work with the DDA and some of our business owners, and we'll see if we can get an representative from MDOT to talk about some of these ideas, and so we'll kind of reality check them against those folks. And once that's done, we'll make some edits and we'll be back in front of the planning commission and this body for the adoption process, which, to refresh everyone's memory on the master plan, is a vote by the planning commission, and then a vote by the city commission, and then a 63-day comment period for the general public, the county, Bingham Township, etc. And then a public hearing, planning commission, and then a final vote. So that is about a 3-month period or process. So that's probably gonna take place around this summer. And then we'll have the updated master plan in place. So any further questions?
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you,
Good
Commissioner.
work thus far, and we'll see you back here in a few months to wrap this up. Great, continuing on, we'll start into old business, as commissioners might recall. We took all of these up at our last meeting. We are on second reading on these resolutions today. First up, under old business is resolution 10 of 2025. Resolution to adopt an ordinance to amend Title 9 General Regulations, Chapter 93 nuisances of the City of St. John's Code of Ordinances regarding noise control. With Chris, you've got all these. I'll look to see if there's any questions on these. No, we've seen these a few times. I noted that the changes that made in our timelines here, or the time adjustments that we made. Motion would be in order to adopt resolution 10 of 2025. So moved. Support. Been moved by Huffnagel, supported by Gursky, to adopt resolution 10 of 2025. Looking at Ann to make sure we're doing.
Yeah, this is the noise one.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that you all saw the other addition, which was to add an exemption for anything that would violate the Right to Farm Act. I know that was an issue with farming.
Yeah.
So it's too difficult to go through and say this would do it or this would do it. So I just want to make sure you guys all
You
saw
built
that
in that
he
exemption.
did build that into that.
Good. Thank you. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, resolution 11 of 2025, adopt an ordinance to amend chapter 155 of the City of St. John's Code of Ordinances regarding landscape standards. This amends some of those barriers that are out there.
Yes, as a brief overview, this addresses some of the concerns that arose during some development review last summer, where some applications had excessive landscaping plans. requirements, frankly, and they came before this body to have them waived, which was inefficient, just to be blunt. And this would right size our landscaping requirements, It's not, throwing them out, but it should make them more realistic.
We have motion, don't we?
So, support.
It's been moved by Gursky, supported by Heiser to adopt resolution 11 of 2025. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next up is, I believe this one as well, Chris, the next couple deal with corner lots, resolution 12 of 2025. Ordinance to amend chapter 155, City of St. John's Code of Ordinances regarding accessory structures.
So the next four all tie together in
Yep.
some ways, or at least they overlap a little bit to solve a couple of issues that have come up. One is how we measure the height of accessory buildings. Obviously, there was a ZBA appeal case about this about a year ago. And the policy change would be that instead of measuring from to the halfway point between peak and eave, we would now measure to the highest point of the building. That change has to be made in a couple of different places, which is why it's reflected in a couple of different resolutions here. This one in particular is the accessory structures section itself. So it's got the language change to switch from the halfway point, to the peak. And also clarify that, because there was concern over that language being ambiguous during the process we had last year. So this will be clarified. This will also clarify a few other things in that section. Most notably, what regulations apply to non-residential accessory structures versus residential accessory structures.
Motion would be in order to adopt resolution 12 of 2025. Moved by Huffnagle, supported by Gursky, that we adopt resolution 12 of 2025. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Continuing on, as Chris said, this next one also deals with the height requirements for corner lots. This is resolution 13 of 2025. Resolution adopting ordinance to amend chapter 155 of the City of St. John's Code of Ordinances regarding height requirements for corner lots.
This one is, again, one of those overlapping amendments. This one addresses the definitions section and how we define the word height. And clearly states that height is to the highest point on the.
Motion would be in order to adopt resolution 13 of 2025. So, or by Gursky, supported by Heiser, that we adopt resolution 13 of 2025. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Now up to resolution 14 of 2025. Adopt an ordinance to amend chapter 155 of the City of St. John's Code of Ordinances regarding general exceptions for corner lots. This gets into building placement of corner lots.
Yes, the primary thing that this amendment does is clarify the definition of front lot line. So that it's easier to determine what the front lot line is, and frankly, to make it more consistent between lots. So the front lot line will now be defined as the street that the property is addressed on. If the property has no address, it will be narrower of the 2 or 3 frontages that the lot has. This will hopefully should make it so that when we're evaluating a lot, we're very clear what is the front, what is the side, and that makes a fairly significant difference in what the zoning regulations are.
Motion would be in order to adopt resolution 14 of 2025. Moved by Huffnagle. Support by Gursky. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Finally, we're up to resolution 15 of 2025, adopt an ordinance to amend chapter 155 of the City of St. John's Code of Ordinances regarding supplementary regulations for keeping of animals. We are back to our famous chicken ordinance here.
Yes, but this is fairly simple.
This
It's
one, yeah.
basically patching a hole that's created by the ordinance you guys just adopted. Which is to say that once we've now defined one side of the corner lot as the front yard unequivocally. We now have to make sure that it's clear that chicken coops cannot be kept in either yard that is fronting on a street. We have a specific issue with this. In fact, I believe the chicken coop was approved because the ordinance said the front yard and not the front yard or the side yard adjacent to a street. So we're now adding that language, so any street fronting yard is not an eligible place for a chicken.
Motion be in order to adopt resolution 15 of 2025. Moved by Huffnagel,
Support.
supported by Heiser. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. That'll be the end of the chicken ordinance for a while. We're gonna, Christina had to go, didn't she?
Yep.
That we bumped it up hard enough for her. We will begin with, what was previous, item on the quarterly budget report, it's item 5, but, has been moved up. I'll look at Chad to see if he's got any comments on this.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, as summarized in the RCA, you know, the first quarter revenues expenditures represent approximately 50% of the budget, so we're, you know, right on track there. There are a couple of things to point out under the general fund, the capital outlay that we still have, which is the $200,000-ish that we're currently working on, renovating the city offices. We have a couple meetings coming up, a couple of iterations already. We'll certainly present that, you know, to the commission, to show the well thought out designs for that in all due time. So I think this is a big year for the city in terms of the projects that we have. Of course, the Wilson Center, proceeds are still, we are still holding. I have some updates in my city manager report as far as that schedule, but those outlays, and those expenditures will be forthcoming. There are a couple of emergency expenditures that we've spent on the Wilson Center, low cost Band-Aids for roof leaks and dehumidification of the building. So, to protect the further deterioration and damage of the interior. But things are going very well. I'll be happy to answer any questions in regards to that.
Yep. Last month, we approved the amendment, so this really reflects that budget.
Yes.
Did you have Christina send out a report that rolls out the revenues, but does it stay unclassified? So we can actually see the revenues that were up or down.
I guess, can you clarify your question?
Well, right now, she rolled up the revenues for the general fund and it all says unclassified. So can we see what?
That's
Those are.
Oh, the actual revenues in detail?
I mean, the expenditures, that's fine, but the revenues, and I know it's not gonna expand the report very much. It's just so we can see, because really, it's essentially 90% of the tax money came in. I get that, but that could skew other revenues within that line that maybe are there, so she could just send us revenues for those funds, that would be great.
That exactly, talk to her about that and send you when we can.
Other questions on the quarterly report? I don't think we need any action on this, so, we'll move on. Next up, we bumped up the, BS and A, payments that, was handed out here earlier this evening. Chad, you want to briefly overview this?
Yeah, so the city currently uses Invoice Cloud for credit card and ACH processing. And those are certainly beneficial to offer kind of a more cafeterized plan for cash receiving. The reconciliation with our bank statements is pretty arduous with regards to how those funds actually come in. BSNA, as you all know, is one of our main, software programs that basically attaches to everything. BSNA is coming out with, software for cash receiving that will really integrate with those programs, a lot better. We have alerted Invoice Cloud, that we were in a position to be able to stop our contract. We had 2 days to do that. So we're in a position to be able to switch to this software. Will save a tremendous amount of reconciliation time and blend in very seamlessly with our current programs. So just requesting, approval of the contract for BSNA. This will allow, the city to begin the uploading of that, the purchase of one reader that we will be able to offer, tap to pay, as well as the chip reader that we currently do not have, in the amount of time that it will take BSNA to stand up that program.
Questions? Chad, we currently have a credit card machine in the city offices, or is this the first time we're having?
Yeah, we have a credit card, processor, it just doesn't have chip capabilities.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
there's
this
really-
would be a higher security.
There's no need to do any kind of new policies, anything, because we've got access hasn't changed in terms of the credit card machine.
Correct, we will still be offering basically a service fee free way of paying, say that five fast times. Via the ACH payment option as detailed in here. There will still be, as we currently do, fees for credit cards, so that will unchanged, but we will be handling all the minor fees for ACH, just to be able to offer that to our customers.
If no questions, a motion would be in order to approve the contract BSA payment effective now. April 21st, authorized mayor to sign, moved by Heiser, supported by Huffnagel. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. We are now up to the approval of the capital improvement plan, earlier this evening. This commission, in conjunction with the planning commission, reviewed, and planning commission approved the capital improvement plan. Now comes before us. Chad, turn it over to you for any comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just wanting to detail some of the very good discussion we had earlier with regards to the capital improvement plan. And I know that, Mayor, you had some questions earlier.
Yep.
I would, at this point in time, because of the, I'll say, the detailed project management associated with some of these projects, the lead times, the necessary things that staff has to do in order to step these projects up. I would view, as far as the CIP plan as it's been presented, as those projects that have merit with the city commission and the planning commission that eventually we would like to tackle. So that inherently those projects are generally supported by the commission and have support at some point in time. Then because of the timing of the budget and the way that this traditionally has been done, it's been done a little early to say, okay, these projects, they make sense. We would like to do those, but the last step that we have is actually understanding revenues across the board with all funds, and then making recommendations to the city commission on what projects are actually included in the budget. So as it's traditionally been done over the years, it's kind of a two-step process. First process is to approve the projects that have merit, that said, yes, that would be good to do. We think that would be a good project if we have the money to do so. And then the next process is when the full budget comes to the commission, those capital improvement projects that at least are recommended to the commission. Certainly they can pull any projects that the commission would like, but that we would recommend including in the budget. Then that would formalize their approval and then appropriate the funds to effectuate the movement of those projects forward. So I wanted to just elaborate a little bit on that because it is kind of a confusing step with regards to, it seemingly looks like a chicken and egg type of thing. So it does allow us some time to package these up and kind of plan accordingly. We know that it's a little bit premature because of the revenue issues, but you know, have some good projects that are across the board are, I think, well supported, well laid out, and staff worked hard to present these to the commission and be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Yeah, thank you. Let me add, and while she's not here, recognize Christina had a chance between meetings to connect with her, chat a little bit about this. I thought she brought some great clarity. Well, one, certainly for us this evening, remind us that this is the department requested capital improvement plan. I think as you said, Chad, we've got a ways to go here. But a couple things, I thought Christina was helpful in reiterating that. For us looking at this evening, if there are areas or projects that we really feel should not be prioritized, we know we've got to back into the budget yet to figure out what we can do. But if there are any areas where we feel we're not ready to prioritize that could be prioritized here, we certainly should move those forward into subsequent years. So if there are any items we would suggest that are not prioritized and move forward, we certainly should voice that. Secondly, and checking with Ann just to confirm, make sure we keep the process going here. I believe this evening we can receive this report that acknowledges us getting it from the planning commission. I think, Chad, as you said, ultimately, we're gonna approve all the projects when we approve the budget, but at least acknowledging that we've received what the departmental requested pieces are, and then that gives you some direction. Ultimately, the budget comes back to us with those priorities. That makes sense. Good.
Yeah, that makes sense, I think, and that's part of what I think this preliminary process is to guide us in the, you know, the prioritization. Like I said, at the planning commission, the priorities from the division and department heads, I think, will help communicate to the commission what their particular priorities are. And that, I think, will further allow good communication, at least from the administrative side, what we would really like to do, and hopefully that aligns with what, you know, the commission priorities are as well. And then, you know, if we have 10 projects and each cost $1 and we only have $7, you know, then we go down the list and we can do project 1 through 7. So it would kind of be that sort of process. So absolutely, we would welcome any input and comments that the commission has with regards to any projects that, you know, should be taken off the list, or projects maybe that we have for the proposed budget year, in this case, the 25-26 budget year, that, you know, we feel, or the commission feels that should be, you know, at a minimum push back a year, for example.
Right.
Thank you.
So I'll open up to anyone if they've got any suggestions, projects they might want to push back to subsequent years, at least that we know for 2026 to guide staff. Commissioner Gursky.
Happy to speak on this quick, and this is where I struggle, and I probably always have in relation to this particular process. It's hard for me to say, yes, carte blanche, these look good. Because I don't know where the funding is gonna lie. Again, the chicken head, the egg scenario. And I guess, there's probably a few items that I would like to see pushed back. But in the same respect, I would like to give staff the ability to look at it as a whole, present it to us in a way that it could be in the finance committee or any one of the committees as we move this forward. Give them a chance to dissect this and then present to us, okay, what is their true priorities? Because what my priorities are may be one thing. The way I see it may be one thing, but without giving them that fair shot, to look at it and see what funding levels are and present it back. Like I said, if it's in the committee sector or brought back in this commission, I guess that I'm okay with that process. As long as we're not, again, carte blanchely including these moving forward, because I don't see any way, shape or form we're gonna afford this as it's laid out.
And Commissioner Griffey, so I clarified with Ann, at least in my mind, I feel it's the difference between approving a plan versus receiving a plan here, and acknowledging, as I said, this is the department, this is titled Departmental Request and Capital Improvement Plan, and I know Christina even mentioned, we're getting used to this new process, this new format. When we start talking about what goes out on our website, we really should think about, in the end, based on what we approve, that's the capital improvement plan we've ultimately selected, everything else getting pushed out subsequent years, that this report probably isn't the one in its current format that goes out there, but ultimately when we approve the budget, that's our capital improvement plan, and then those other items become future items for consideration.
Well, and again, I guess to expand upon that, I think that kind of sets us up for a little bit of failure. If we can't achieve that, but we present, this is what our goal was to achieve, but we don't achieve, I mean, that doesn't bode well for us, the community, or anything else. So I'd rather just get down to that finite detail before anything is then put out to the public.
Right.
As far as this is our plan for 25-26.
Just a thought, because looking at your ordinance and at the state statute, really says that the planning commission shall prepare the plan, and prioritize it. In my mind, there's a difference between the plan, and maybe we're using the same words to mean two different things. There's a difference between this plan, which is required by your ordinance and statute, which the planning commission has done and prepared, versus the approved capital improvement, which is what the commission would eventually do through your votes and through your budgeting process. So I don't know that, acknowledging the plan that the planning commission put together binds you to anything, even in the statute, it says it's their, it's what they believe is and prioritize them. Is that different from your understanding?
No, I think that's my understanding. I think the key issue is, as I see it, and it's, I found this process when I came to the city, interesting, I'll say. And that it is, kind of a chicken and the egg thing, but I think the most important thing is that, in essence, there's nothing on here, no project that, that would be summarily rejected by the commission as not having merit. I think all the projects here, there's a logical, explainable, understandable, and repeatable, reason why they've been put forward. Certainly last year when we went through this process, when this was presented, we had already gone through a little bit of that scrubbing of these projects and held them. This year, we made the formal presentation that we're going through now, everything that we have received from department heads and division heads. And then once we get those revenues, we will then make recommendations on the projects that make the cut, if you will. And I certainly don't think the way things are looking that all the projects would make the cut. But just like what Commissioner Hershey said, we'll wait and see what the numbers are and kind of go through that normal budgeting process, work with the department heads and division heads on what priorities there are, if we can't fund them all, and then formally present that to the commission for their adoption.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that my perception of things is consistent with the city manager and how I was looking. This is the guide telling you these are the things that we would like to have included, knowing that the budget process is gonna be underway. We have some unknowns,
Absolutely.
in that budget process for sure. So I've never felt like the CIP is locking us in until we have a budget in place. To say that we're allocating funds for appropriated funds, it's really a plan, it's a guide for staff. So I'm very comfortable with this, knowing that we have the ability to collectively negotiate what our budget numbers are gonna be, before we put the new budget in place in July 1.
And clearly, as you said, planning commission did their job. They've approved it, and sent it to us. So based on that, motion would be in order. Do you wanna approve, or you wanna receive?
I would make a motion to receive, the CIP and place on file.
Been moved and supported that we receive the capital improvement plan and place it on file. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is a resolution being brought forward in regards to salaries and wages. Commissioner Gursky, I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah, in light of some of the very topics that you brought up today, I think it's very important for the city to take a good objective look at the salaries and compensation that we provide for all of our staff, and try to build a sustainable path forward. Looking at all the possible benefits the city provides, as there's a wide variety, and there's a wide variety of impacts coming down the road right now that we're gonna have to prepare for. Related to healthcare costs, pension liability, et cetera. The last one was done in 2017. I think it's just to take a look at this. So at this point, I passed out a resolution. I'm happy to read it, or I'm happy to wait to read it, either way.
I think we can waive the reading, but I'm sorry,
We got it, copies.
pass that over. Thank you, Mr. Gursky. And I worked with Brad the last couple of days, and apologize to Commissioner Huffnagel, personnel issue as well. But some of what we discussed, certainly in personnel committee, really looking at where our wage bands are right now, knowing we haven't looked at them in a while. Knowing that, even during that meeting and subsequent conversations with Chad, we said, we're probably overdue for doing a, wage study. To get all of our positions, in alignment, and look at them to market. We certainly want to expedite this. As you said, Commissioner Gursky, a couple of things, knowing some of the liabilities, regarding our pension, knowing some of the healthcare costs. I personally think it's probably wise at this point, just to put a freeze on any wage changes. We did make exceptions, as you'll see in here. We do know any positions that are collectively bargained fall outside of this. We did make exceptions for any positions for our lower grade 4 and below employees, where individuals might have some eligibility for a step increase. We certainly didn't want to foresee some of those lower end employees get left behind in this, knowing that financially they're a bit more constrained than others. So we did make that allowance here for positions grade 4 and below.
Fair, I have a question about whether or not we would need to authorize the expenditure, if we're gonna do that with this motion, or that would be a separate piece if indeed we're wanting to move forward with that.
Yeah, I think we probably would need to start making the study
I
itself.
think you do that when you would select the firm.
Yeah.
To do the work, because then we would know the cost at that time, we could make the corresponding adjustment at that time, because.
That's what I would.
Hypothetically, if they all come back at, say $100,000.
Yeah.
I might be, I might be less likely to move
Yeah.
forward with it, so to set an expenditure or budget, now I think we can do that when we get the quotes back.
And we stated in here, what we're asking our city manager to do is solicit bids to initiate a study.
Then they present.
Yeah, budget committee and personnel committee will have some say in that, of course. Yeah, we didn't set it for next year, we said earliest practical date, so that way certainly we can get this going now. Commissioner Heiser.
Just to ask the vice mayor or the mayor, what do you think the time frame is on this? I mean,
How quick can we turn it around?
yeah, how quick do we think we can turn this around?
I would think, I mean, in my experience, you can probably do it within 6 months. You know, depending on what we see back, and that's gonna be how elaborate we wanna go, and I think that one of the discussions we have when we solicit for these. Bids is how elaborate do we think we gotta go, and what's some parameters? And, you know, that will no doubt dictate the timeline, but I think 6 months is been my experience and what's reasonable turnaround.
Do you think that the staff along with the personnel committee would be kind of fleshing out what would be included in that, what the scope would be, or is that
Yeah.
something you want the full commission to?
Yeah, I think that in the way I put it is directly back to the full commission, just so we have that, everybody has that same understanding.
Correct.
So, yeah, I would be totally comfortable with that process. And then recommend back to the full commission. Chad.
Thank you, Mayor. I just received this copy of the resolution. I was not aware that it was gonna be discussed today. Just a couple of, I guess, knee-jerk comments. I don't know that, this has been reviewed by our city attorney, for that. So I think something of this importance, it would behoove, the city attorney to perform a review on that, to make sure that there are, any legalities that are perhaps being overlooked. Second, I think it's an excellent comment you made earlier, Commissioner Gursky, about the CIP also pertains to, the consideration of the FY 25-26 budget process in the sense of, most of the staff, that are non-city commission appointed, with some rare exceptions, are in the middle to upper middle of their pay scale. And accordingly, the concerns that have been expressed in our subcommittees throughout the year, generally speaking, involve more of the executive staff. And looking at this, it would appear as it is a carte blanche freezing of salaries prior to any impacts of the FY 25-26 budget. So I would think that it might behoove the commission to proceed accordingly through the budget process, understand the revenues, understand the implications of the healthcare that may be coming at us. Not knowing if it's if we get an early Christmas present, it's a 15% increase, or we get coal in our stocking and it's a 40% increase. So that will greatly impact our ability within the budget process itself. Lastly, this is something that is related to the charter in regards to the setting of wages. It's very explicit that the commission has the authority to set wages of those positions that are appointed by the commission, which is the city manager, the police chief, the treasurer, the clerk, and the assessor. I'm 95% sure that those are them. The other positions, those are more administrative and fall under the appropriations of the actual budget to be set administratively in that regard. So I think all of that collectively, those three things, it would certainly be my recommendation, as I have talked to several of the commissioners that do have concerns about this, including Commissioner Gursky, to build this into our process, appropriate those funds in the budget, understand the implications of what our budget actually looks like. We might not even be able to recommend that. I can't stare at you right now and say that, but I think it would be good to follow the budget process and let that roll out as it's designed to do, as opposed to maybe look at this without the benefit of that knowledge and those numbers and proceed accordingly. And also, let the city attorney, look at this, I think is a very, important resolution with regards to, the city. Thank you.
I can jump in and I'll let you, but I want to clarify a couple of things too in this is, Chad, you got into the bands themselves, and I think that's one of the questions that I'm hearing from the commission here, as to how far off these bands really are. You were saying that, everyone's, sort of in the middle. But if your bands aren't right, how do you even know that? And I think that's part of what, we're really trying to drive at here with this study is we've got to get the bands right first and then come back in to certainly look at, where people are in these modified bands, because, the math is pretty simple. As we've added COLAs, the lower band's bumped up, but the higher band, just from a percentage side, is bumped up higher and higher. So we really want to look at accurate reflective bands right now first to then see where people are. Secondly, I agree, you certainly have that discretion over non-appointed employees, but I do want to say we also hired you too. And certainly can, if we're not going to do this direction, can certainly direct our city manager to put a wage freeze in place, I believe, and still be according to the charter.
And as I say, I mean, if we're good with if we're feeling that this is not, good, I think the motion would simply be, we have to wage freeze, immediately upon review of, this resolution by our city attorney to be then brought back, at our next meeting.
I'm looking at Ann, looks like she wants to jump in, I'll let Ann jump in.
I would just before Ann maybe comes in, I think the basis for, I think where we're at was, I think as Commissioner Gursky mentioned, the 2017 study. And that those had these, I'll say, we're using the term bands, the salary minimums and maximums of each position. And logic would dictate if those were roughly correct, then there was no either questions or complaints, and then the COLAs were added accordingly, that those would be generally in the same range as before, albeit comparatively, maybe with a couple of exceptions. And I think that's what we're discussing is what is the best way to try and garner, kind of double check where those bands are in the process by which to do that. And, maybe, I'm not sure how quickly this can be done. It's a smaller city. I've done it with bigger cities. But, maybe there is something to approve and consider appropriating a certain amount of funds for this process. And then certainly any wage increases would be appropriated and projected as far as the FY 25-26 budget, which is not scheduled to be adopted until, I believe, the May meeting. So 2 to 3 months from now. So there's some months that there is some time to look at this logically, and as we proceed forward, in a way to get the information that we need and present this in a fair, firm, and consistent way with the numbers that we'll get with revenues and balance those things out. And certainly we can work forward with including that study either in this budget, with a supplemental budget appropriation, and understand the timings that it has, and we can ask around how quickly that can be done. So, I understand the concerns of the commission. I don't think that this is anything that the commission necessarily needs to do, because there would be no proposed increases. It would be incorporated with the overall budget process, and that's not, I believe, the schedule right here. I think it's the May meeting. maybe?
Correct.
Yeah, so the May meeting, so it's. Or the fourth meeting in May, so.
And it's third meeting in
third,
May
because
due
of
to Memorial
Memorial
Week.
Day. Yeah, so that, date is. May the 19th is the projected day we would have all of that wrapped up. Certainly some time in between to have those discussions if the commission so chooses.
Commissioner Gursky.
To clarify one thing, Jed, I mean, you indicated that, you know, obviously the raises would be granted in the budget process. And are you referring to strictly COLA raises or step raises as well?
Any raises that would be applied to the salaries or hourly wages of the city employees would be incorporated and are typically adjusted at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Right,
So those would pertain both to any step increases or COLAs.
So steps wouldn't occur during the year, it's addressed July 1.
Correct.
and then, you know, what is the process, because I know I've never been involved in it, what is the process in which those are reviewed by personnel as far as the step raises and or COLAs?
So noting it's a new process that we have this year, our thought was is to incorporate the step increases along with the annual reviews. To be able to confirm, employees are, I'll say average or greater, in the service and the work ethic that they have. And then if they're not at the top of their pay scale, then they would be provided a step increase if they're performing average or greater. And then, of course, any COLAs that would be issued on top of that to the overall pay scale. But again, those would, this particular budget year, and my thought was is every budget year thereafter, there would be, this two-step process in accordance with the overall budget process to be effective at the beginning of the new fiscal year.
One more question, I think, with there.
Commissioner Gursky.
And since we reviewed this, not this particular document, but ultimately looked at this a little bit. In terms of wage, is there anything in our charter that refers to setting of compensation as a whole?
Not setting of compensation, but I think there's, and what I'd like to give the commission a little more information on is what the commission's role versus what the city manager's role is and how you work together. And so I think that the commission deserves to fully understand what that is. Before, because, we've talked about your charter before, it's got, it needs.
It's 100 years old.
So I feel without, having just seen this tonight, I just don't feel comfortable recommending this or having you pass this without, one, that information. Because we want to make sure that everyone's working within the charter. And then secondly, questioning, I guess, the need for a freeze right now. For example, would it be appropriate just to make a motion to have the salary study done? Because you could approve a salary study. I just don't know I'm not an employment lawyer, and this is the kind of thing that I would send to our employment lawyer, know if there's any unintended consequences of doing a salary freeze, particularly when my understanding is the new salaries wouldn't take effect until July. It seems like we have some time. I'm just concerned as I read this, for example, that the wages shall remain frozen until the salary study is done. What if that takes 6 months? You might have some unintended. I just want to make sure there's no unintended legal consequences, which I haven't been able to look at, plus the unintended consequences of maybe not filling a role that you really need because people see a salary freeze and it makes them nervous. Those are the types of things that without, having the opportunity to really think this through, I'm concerned about just sitting there right now.
I can appreciate that. I mean, how fast can we get an opinion on that? Can we have it by the next meeting?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, because what has happened is there's grave concerns in the financial impacts of the decisions made here. And I fail to reasonably agree that the charter would stop the commission from ultimately doing its job financially, short of not approving a budget. If we can't ultimately accurately and objectively look at compensation.
And what I'd like to do is to hear, frankly, I'd like to have a conversation with you about what your concerns are, what your, the issues are, and then bring back an opinion that addresses, you know, where, you know, what your concerns are, you know, where the authority is among the groups, and so you guys can consider that. And I can have that opinion, you know, closed session, that can certainly be done, for the March meeting. But again, I just, without knowing what the concerns are for the freeze and the need for the immediate freeze, and then what authority, that just is a little bit, that's a little bit broader than what I've looked at so far on the issue, which is just sort of a charter issue. You know, my reading of the charter is that you guys have broad budgetary, sort of the day-to-day operations of the manager. I would like a little bit more time to get a more comprehensive legal opinion that draws on the legality of freeze, the authority to do the freeze. Those are things that I just haven't been able to put together yet.
Dr. David, Chad, I also heard you say, let me clarify this. Over the next, well, we've got what, 4 months left in the budget year, is that right? Roughly, 5 months. There are no slated salary or wage changes that will be coming there. They've already all been set for the year.
Correct.
Okay.
Other than what would be a merit bonus that could be brought to the commission, that is routinely brought forward, but
Any of
no
those come forward.
across the board, anything adjustments, those are all planned to be incorporated in the budget process that we have, you know, March and April and the better part of May to be able to discuss, you know, the implications and concerns and questions from the commission, which certainly, which is, you know, my charge and our staff's charge to be able to provide that information to the commission.
Comments, questions?
I'll chime in.
Commissioner Harding.
Until probably a month or so ago. You know, that was the first time, I can blame myself for not asking to see these wage bands or even the scale. And currently, I've never seen a scale. I've seen the wage minimum and maximum. I've never seen any steps to go along with those, to see where people fall or move forward. And, you know, to a point, I looking at the charter, you know, we set the purse strings, but it's hard to set the purse strings when you don't know what wages are being given out. And to understand that, so, you know, as we move forward, you know, I think there needs to be more documentation and communication coming up to us that shows how those schedules are moving and moving forward, because just looking at some of that stuff and analysis that, you know, I did after I got those, just on the potential, you know, liabilities that on the pension side, was a big number. And those are non-actuarially done, so that's probably more on the lower end, when it's all said and done, so, you know, I'll blame myself for not asking for that information up front. When we do the budget, but it's also should be information that's readily available at any given moment. At that point too, so.
But I guess to go back, sorry,
No, you're fine. Commissioner Gershon.
and you're saying that we shouldn't take any action on this whatsoever.
I would not recommend taking action on the freeze part of it. But whether you wanna, you know, and I don't think it's outside this commission's ability to recommend a, wage study necessarily, but I also would think that maybe you could have some time to work with the. It doesn't sound like there's a really understanding of how long that will take. And whether that's feasible to get done before the budget's approved. And so that might be, if you wanna approve, that's why I don't know that. There's some pieces that I just haven't connected the dots to know whether, I don't. You know, if you wanna approve a wage study right now and say that, you know. But if it takes 6 months, I don't know what a realistic time that is. If it takes a month, then you can certainly wait till next March, you know, the March meeting to approve it, and we done by April, which would be the time of the budget. That's just the unknown factor that leads me to be uncomfortable about recommending course of action on this at this point. But
Commissioner Heisler.
Vice Mayor, do we want to make a motion to approve staff to complete a document, an RFP for our review for a wage study to be presented at our next meeting? To correspond with that legal opinion? To get them moving towards that direction, and even if we decide not to go with it or can't,
Yeah,
I mean, we can always go with the wage study. It's just, let's get that process moving, so we're not delaying.
Well, in some respect, though, I guess, I struggle because, you know, based on Ann's comment, maybe I'm taking out of context, but if ultimately we don't have the ability to set a wage, then why are we looking at a wage study? You know, what good is that information can do to us if we can't bring it back and ultimately direct, this is what it's going to be? Or an approval in these ranges?
well, I think you certainly have the control over the purse strings. So if you decide to budget X amount of money, you know, the manager, whoever the staff that implements it has to work within that budget number. So to the extent that to say that you have no control over wages is not correct. You do have that control through the allocation. There's nothing that I've seen that requires you to budget, you know, the money to cover these things, you just work within the budget. So I don't know what the wage study will garner, if this is, you know, whether you think that's necessary stuff, that's certainly something. The other thing is we could have, if you don't wanna wait a month, we could look into some of these issues and have a special meeting. You know, I don't know what the timeline is on this wage study. I'm concerned about having a wage freeze or that, you know, that is prolonged while we're waiting for a study, if wage studies take 6 months.
and related to that, I know Chad presented to Personnel Committee. Really what is a sort of an 8-step process, in terms of our bans. I assume we can adopt policy, that if we are gonna, because this is one of the challenges right now, is we really don't have an operating procedure underneath our bans. If commission adopts this, what I would consider an HR policy regarding the bans, then our manager adheres to that policy, then correct?
Well, that's what I would like.
That's some of the questions I think.
That's
we're
what we,
looking at.
that's exactly what.
That's
That's what, this is exactly, you know, it's kind of hard at, you know, answering questions and.
Absolutely.
Especially with the way that the charter is written. So that's why I would like to have kind of your perspective on some of the ideas you might have. And then give you a legal opinion on where those come out.
Okay.
Plus getting an employment lawyer involved as well, that can have an eye, what I do, I can do the charter, I can look at the charter, I can look at your policies, I can do that. But I would like someone involved who also has an eye to, you know, any potential issues that may arise with respect to, employment issues.
Going back to Commissioner Heiser's comment, I'm looking at that second further resolve, really feels like it might be a motion for this evening. That we're directing the city manager to solicit bids to initiate a salary study. Directed by the Personnel and Budget Committees, to report recommendations to the city commission at the earliest practical date. Kind of say it's prioritized too.
and limiting it just to that.
We're ready to do that this evening.
I would have to change one word.
Yeah.
I would say to report recommendations to the city. Because again, I wanna make sure we're.
Yeah. Action.
Yeah, for
Commissioner.
you're talking about words, paragraph. Seven.
Yep.
And so the paragraph 7 and eliminating the word commission. It refers to the city.
City. Clearly, had a conversation this evening, we need to have a salary, study completed to really assess this fully.
But there's no rest of guarantee that would come back to the commission. Right now, yeah, peeking through the mic here.
I don't wanna, publicly, I just don't wanna get into a lot of the legal issues here, just because I wanna make sure that I've had a chance to look at them thoroughly.
Yeah.
But at least, I think when I read that, we wanna make sure that the city commission is taking action that it's supposed to take under the charter. And the city management, city staff have the action that they're responsibility. And so if you leave it open to the city and that's directly back to the city commission, to me, that leaves it open that it could be either staff or the city commission. I mean, obviously, it's gonna be a public record that you would want to see. But I don't think that my elimination of the word is not intended to say that you guys want to see it or that you don't have the ability to act on it by charter that lets you within your rights, because that's certainly, you have budgetary rights to do that. I just want to make sure before I think there's an issue about who does what, and I just want to make sure that it's a little bit more.
Also on that, the language also is directed by the personnel and the budget committee, so. So under that language. 4 or 5 of us would have involvement.
But we can't even do that necessarily. I mean,
I thought I heard Ann say we're just taking out the word city in the last piece.
It's take out the word commission.
Here's my point, it's not to imply that you don't have the authority to do that.
Yeah.
I need to look at all these issues.
So I'm honestly, at this point, I'm inclined just to wait.
Okay.
And have Ann come back, because I don't think, if we're not gonna get the ability to set a parameter, then there's gonna be no benefit.
Okay.
We're just gonna cost the city money.
Right.
And that's the last thing I want to do,
I agree.
because we're already indebted to that too far. So. We'll wait, and if you can get an opinion back to us for sure by next meeting, and we can go in closed session and have to have discussions about anything in between.
And
I think that would be better defined than leaving it open too much, because otherwise we're just spinning our wheels and potentially open ourselves up.
Commissioner Huffnagel.
A couple of things, one is just the technicality that there isn't a personnel committee, it's a personnel advisory committee, and then also I don't think the budget committee is the finance advisory.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
correct.
very specific there. I guess the other thing is, we could be asking staff to go out and start to gather information to see what's available, as far as consultants, without actually necessarily formalizing that action. I would hate to see things slow down, even a little bit, if we're thinking it might be an extensive time period to do it.
Mhm.
If indeed we want to have something that's actionable before the budget is adopted, then, the sooner we can get the information, and we need to take action on it potentially, the better.
Chad.
Thank you, Mayor, and that was ostensibly what I was going to suggest, as what Commissioner Huffnagel just stated, is we can certainly begin, looking at, RFP languages. We're not reinventing the wheel here. There's, I'm sure, very cookie cutter type of RFPs that go out that we can certainly look at. We can look at timeframes and approximate costs for that, so, you know, at least we can have a modicum of information to, present to the commission, for consumption and action at the next meeting.
Is that sufficient? I just, certainly, Commissioner Thirsty, you raised it, and I know. All of us are certainly looking at this, large cost that we're gonna be anticipating for healthcare, and it causes great alarms. When we start to look at some of those projections and the impact it has on all of our service delivery here, so certainly wanna keep our eye on this. If there's no further action on this, we'll continue on. Next up is Fantasy Forest Playground installation, vendor selection and contract. Bill's here. Chance you too, so
Yeah.
we got Bill's name down.
I can certainly tee this up, and then I have a very close phone friend if need be. This is part of our multi-step process. Bill, it allows me a chance to, you know, commend Bill for all the hard work he's put into managing a multifaceted project along with help from Director Smith. And I passed out to you this spreadsheet like this. That's kind of a backdrop to, the RCA that it was in your packet. You recall the Fantasy Forest 2.0 delivery has ostensibly, 4 major components. That being the first bid for the play equipment, the second bid for, the installation, security and lighting, engineering, and then the 5th one really is city direct contracting. That is indicated in the orange box. The second largest, facet of this is the acquisition of the installation bids, which we were sent out, last month. And then we received them. We received 2 bids from Rhino and Isabella Court, which are indicated, both in the RCA as well as in this handout in the purple area. Rhino's bid was $926,956.78. Isabella Corp's bid was $769,000. The Isabella is using a licensed installer or a certified installer, My Little Tykes. And we have a letter of recommendation in the RCA from Wade Trim. And certainly would recommend the award of the bid and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract for Isabella with the understanding that the city attorney just has to provide their approval of that contract. The one thing that I also wanted to mention is, and I've updated a few of the commissioners or the commissioners in my updates. The total amount of revenue that we have received for this project is shown in the spreadsheet that I attached was a little over $1.632 million. At the bottom there, it says revenue. If you total all of the colored boxes, as I've summarized at the bottom, that comes to roughly $1,750,000, which would require us to contribute an additional $113,000 roughly towards the project to deliver everything as part of what we're referring to the base bid of this project, which is the main playscape. I would note that part of that $113,000 is a $38,000 contingency that's built into the installation bid. If we have no surprises, that obviously would be turned back to the city, but that's a built-in contingency to be able to keep the project moving swiftly and fastly. If there's small changes that are encountered, that we have to address when we're delivering that project. So that number could really range from, you know, roughly $80,000-ish up to, you know, 113, which I feel very comfortable in, noting it's mostly an above grade delivered project. We're not digging a whole bunch of underground piping that we're not gonna know what we encounter. So with that, I don't know if Bill, you have anything else to add to that?
You've summed it up pretty much.
Okay.
So there's a few areas. As far as our city director one, we could maybe look to control, but that's minor amounts, so.
Yeah, the city direct contracting costs are, there's a lot of zeros there, so they're currently estimates. We like to be a little bit high. We feel like we can deliver all of those, in conjunction with that. And, so we would certainly recommend, the award for Isabella. And as the commission has previously done, it authorizes to use the, supplanted ARPA funds for this. We do have, monies that would be able to provide that net funding to, be able to deliver this first phase, of Fantasy Forest 2.0.
Chad, this number, when you look at revenues, includes already city contributions of how much?
So there is the city contributions of $235,000 thus far. With the additional 75 that was.
I was gonna say,
provided
that's
for the
75
first year.
included in there in the
So that's
first year
added
as
to
well.
that, so.
That's on top of the 235
Correct.
already. This year's budget authorized how much? Was it
It's
235?
in the budget, there's $235,000.
235,
Yeah,
okay.
so this would be another 113, so city contributions would be around, 450 of a, 1 point, rounded up, $1.8 million project, 1.75,
350.
no, 450.
Yeah, no one. There.
Year
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
If you add 113.
Correct, correct.
Plus 75. Plus 75 plus the 235.
Just a very quick question about whether or not we would have the ability to still be pursuing donations to underwrite these costs during the project year.
Yes, we are still, open to receiving donations for this that would be, immediately placed into this project. Some donors, that there are very, very few, have, discussed restricting their monies toward future phases. And that I think is 1 or 2 donors. Most of them, and we thought that we would, at what would be the groundbreaking, do another wave of fundraising to be able to close, I'll say the gap, if you will, of this project, which would lower that 113 even more. So yes, is the simple answer to your question.
Thank you.
In terms of the installation bid, are there any pieces that, we can look at within this bid that we can potentially delay?
No,
I'm looking at landscaping, for example.
yeah, that's the landscaping is just, the plants all throughout the site. We have a grant for that, a planting grant that we're gonna be getting, through Wade Trim to be able to do a community-based planting project. So it's trees, shrubbery and plants and perennials and all that stuff that would go into that.
Is that in,
Yeah.
is that in your 1,600,000 then?
That, all those numbers are included in that. Bill, do you have something to add?
Some of that landscaping is for site restoration, I believe, too, kind of grass seed and that sort of.
Yeah, so it's kind of a catch-all for that. Thank you, Bill. So we've did a very purposeful and intentional value engineering of this, including reducing the poured in place surface to its bare minimum, which was a very high cost item that is part of this. It's $92,000. And it was, a lot higher, so we worked with Wade Trim to, kind of scale those back a little bit to just the areas that are required, but would still offer a universally accessible play service to all the entryways and a lot of the touchdown points for the slides.
I'm knocking off the 38,000 contingency, we're still coming off about 75,000 short.
Correct.
Are there any outstanding, I know there's some asks out there. Thinking of some of the corporations that didn't donate by end of year, certainly want to get I want to get the Friends of Fantasy Forest back together to just kind of review that list, again. Bill, you want to jump in?
Yeah, one of the things that we're working on with, oh, I forget the name of the company, that works with Little Tikes, Unlimited Play. We're working on them to kind of come out with some additional story type things, including like an adult that's in a wheelchair that has kids, and then, you know, a family that has younger kids that are disabled, to try and, encourage more donations to the project. So that's kind of one thing we're working on, hopefully to bring in additional revenue. That hasn't gone out yet, but maybe that's something, along with our groundbreaking, that all that stuff kind of is rolled in together, to try and bring in some more money. I can't say, yeah, we're gonna bring in 60,000, don't worry about this. I can't promise that, but that's something that we're working on too, in addition to some other grants.
I guess let me also ask, I know when we looked at the funding projection the last time. I felt we left that conversation saying that if we had enough to complete what I'll call phase one. You know, there was some interest in starting to build out phase two. I guess from our projections, where did our cost go over?
There were the cost for installation was a little bit higher than projected. You know, with dealing with this order of magnitude and a fairly large playscape, you know, there's not, you know, a huge amount of competition, but that was a large part of it. The security and lighting costs were a little bit higher than projected. You know, I was hoping that they would be around 100-ish thousand, but with regards to the lighting and the camera systems, that is a kind of the in order to protect this large investment, we felt that it was necessary to have the minimum lighting that we really needed there. And, you know, again, there is some nickel and diming that could happen within the city direct contracting. Could that get down to 50,000? Probably not, but that 71 could get maybe down to 65. You know, so certainly, I see that, you know, net needs of the project would be not exceeding that, and hopefully with, you know, our collaborations with Unlimited Play and another big push, you know, that might be down to, you know, a net need of maybe hopefully around 50,000, but time will tell.
How about the nature play area under city direct contracting? That I thought was an additional phase.
That could be cut. We're currently getting quotes from 2 local vendors to be able to build that natural play with a lot of the harvested timber that we have from cutting down some of the, you know, the healthy trees that needed to be moved, the very few trees that we had to do. That is something that we can eliminate from the project. If there are, you know, some concerns, it would be a nice opportunity for the local contractors to kind of offer their sponsorship for that area. But those bids or those quotes rather will be coming in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Removing that, assuming the contingency as well, brings us down to a shortfall of 45,000. Other thoughts?
The water line just for the drinking fountain.
No, there's two other water services we're gonna put in to hook hoses up to spray it down, so we're not having to take hose over. Gotta make it all watering plants.
Commissioner Hersey.
Is there any viability to ultimately trying to phase in the security light, I mean, lighting in one and security in second? And, run wires, put it in there, but then, I don't know, the logistics of ultimately the componentry, but to me, that seems the only logical one that we might go to do something with.
Talking with them, a lot of the expense too was, I think, the posts, if I remember right. I mean, the concrete supports for the lights was kind of a lot of the cost. I don't know, I think they've combined as many lights as they could and cameras onto as few posts as possible. That was, I think, a large, the exact number I don't remember. But I just remember them saying that was quite a bit of that expense.
Yeah, in regards to the natural play area. That 30,000 is, I have really no idea what that number will come in at. It could be 15, could be 15. And we wanted to be able to offer that opportunity with some local contractors to see that. That is a big swing that we could consider, but just wanted to have that information, prior to completely pulling the plug. It is kind of a neat area, where that's at, and a different type of play area for kids that we can kind of add. It's the cheapest of the additional areas, that we thought might not be a bad idea, noting the material is, ostensibly right there. Save mulch and landscaping and maybe a couple other small built structures.
I just know for me personally, certainly want to see fantasy tourists move forward yet. This 113,000 though is certainly not palatable right now. Just given the conversation we've been having earlier this evening as well, I think, at least for me, we've got to find a way to certainly get this number down and prioritize that funding piece to get the final few sponsors locked in here. But I'm not comfortable moving forward at this 113 amount. So I think we certainly have to do something here.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I would say, I wanted to mention that there were the ARPA funds that came in, that we elected to utilize for bookkeeping purposes, for the police salaries, which was an allowable expense for ARPA funds. It was very clean on the books. So what we did was we basically set those supplanted ARPA funds aside because they were transferred over. The sum total of those funds still remaining is about $600,000. So that in a prior resolution, when that was done, the commission provided direction on, I believe it was utilizing those supplanted funds in the Wilson Center, Fantasy Forest, and they were supposed to be used for the parking lot, which they were not used for the parking lot, the Highland Street parking lot we were talking about before. So those funds are, ostensibly available for use in the current budget. But obviously, we've been working very, very hard to streamline this, to value engineer this project as much as possible.
Mary, about the ARPA funds, those were signed, is that the term for it? You would have those funds signed within your budget?
Those are, we're not, if I can, Mayor, those were not technically assigned. You know, that's why we use this supplanted part to just replace the appropriated budget that we had and utilize ARPA funds, so that freed up ostensibly those funds to be utilized.
You didn't have anything under 10 million, you didn't have to have projects where you could technically say it was revenue loss and not have to have projects that would support offsetting expenditures, and that's basically what they did, was not tied to any expenditures, because then you'd have to have your reports done by the end of 2024 that you're obligated, but if you did it under revenue loss, you were fine. That's what you're, you know.
So what does the money need to be spent out?
2026.
So
Check.
these, you know, that's why we made the decision to utilize those funds for the police wages. Because we were able to meet those requirements, process all of our paperwork, and that is now complete. So these funds do not have any expenditure deadlines or tie bars to. That's why we're using the term supplanted, because those were just moved over with the monies that were previously appropriated. We just utilized the ARPA funds to fund those as we presented. I think it was, oh God, last.
But then spending them again, does that not create a hole in your general fund? Because those ARP dollars are one time.
You're gonna use fund equity.
Exactly, yeah.
You're just gonna use fund equity for that, so you had the inflationary boost, because you were gonna pay law enforcement no matter what during that whole time, so this was just an inflationary boost to
Yeah.
everybody's fund equity or to do some projects, at that point, so it was just a windfall.
And if I can, Mayor, I think with the concerns and certainly my philosophy over the years is when you get these one-time funds, they, you know, it'd certainly be my hope that they're used to leverage other dollars. And I think that would be a good use of these, that they're, you know, basically, we're leveraging those, our city funds, if you will. The appropriations within the city budget, we're, you know, leveraging roughly 66 cents on the dollar, give or take. If not a little bit more.
So I just have one more question, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Heiser.
Is there anything else that we're getting ready to bid out since we bid this all out in pieces? Is there anything else that's outstanding there that we're gonna need to see in the next 6 months besides, I'll say, a change order that would come in from what we approved? Is there anything out there that, hey, we're getting ready to bid this out, that's gonna be an additional cost?
This should be everything.
Are you saying with the associated with Fantasy Force 2.0?
Yeah.
Correct. This is all in, all phase one that would be able to put a red bow around it. That's correct.
Then I'll make a motion to approve that we go with little bidder of Isabella Court for $769,000. And authorize the mayor to sign the paperwork.
Sure, subject to attorney review. Can I offer a friendly amendment or suggest? I still really am concerned about, I mean, we're basically okaying 113,000 deficit. And I know we got the contingency, but at minimum, I think we've got to put that nature play area on hold. We should try to do something, and but granted, if more money comes in,
But that nature play area should come back to us anyway for approval.
yeah,
Probably,
Yeah,
it's
nature
probably,
play-
it's probably gonna be
Yeah.
over 10 grand.
right.
Yeah, like, it
So
will more than likely be a
Yes.
contract of some sort over 10 grand.
I got you.
It's quotes, and that's what our hope was, is they're due at the beginning of March. And then our plan was to bring those to the March commission.
I'll wait till somebody approves it, sorry, comment, but you're not supposed to.
We've, there's a motion on the table to approve Isabella Court as the low bidder pending legal review. Is there support?
No support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there questions on that motion?
I'll just comment again, you know, the only reason that we gotta move this forward is we're tied to the project. I mean, do I like the 110,000? Now, is there ways to whittle away? Maybe not, but we'll whittle that away in 25, 26 on parks requests. You know, on the capital improvement that, you know, there's probably gonna be stuff that was set up there going forward that
Yeah.
might get chewed up a little bit due to this 113,000.
Yeah.
If we can't find additional funds, so, you know.
Are there pieces
We're too
that-
far along
I
not
got
to
you.
approve this tonight.
Understood. Yeah, we're at it. Are there pieces within this budget that will ultimately fall in the 25, 26 fiscal year?
Well, the book,
Expenditure. will-
I'm looking at another finance director.
Yeah, yeah.
Sits on the commission.
Expenditure will be.
The purchase orders will have to be issued at the time, which requires the appropriations to be in the city budget.
Okay,
The expenditure and booking of the expense will happen in multiple fiscal years.
okay,
So we have to write the purchase order, have to be appropriated.
I got you.
When it occurs.
When it occurs.
Yep.
So, yeah, as you're kind of saying. This,
We have to say somewhere along the line.
we have to say somewhere else.
Yeah, we're gonna-
Absolutely.
Another part of the process.
Okay.
Right.
There's a motion on the table. It's been moved and supported. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly got, yes, thank you. Certainly, let's get back with the Friends of Fantasy Forest and see if we can continue to shrink that gap. I know they have a couple asks out there from corporations, so hopefully we can do that next couple months. Check with
It certainly will, Mayor, and you know, with our next big push, we wanted to tie all that in with the kind of groundbreaking ceremonies that I'll talk about very briefly in my city manager report.
Very good. Next on the agenda is the 2025 street millage improvements and sole source designation. Justin, I'll turn that one over to you to kick it off.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get excited when this comes up, because that means hot weather, versus this, time, so I get excited. I'm gonna keep it pretty brief. We've all seen this before, debating throughout the, with the street program. Nothing new, same process through it. The only thing that, last year, when I brought this forward, I asked for sole sourcing, with Michigan Paving Materials through the continuing years of, the street program fiscal year 28, 29. So that's just at that time, commission had, requested that we put that out to bid one more year. At that time, noting that a number of NDOT projects were coming to an end, and, we would get a number of other additional bidders, but I think, as you see in the bids, Michigan Paving was still the low bidder on that. So once again, along with, approval of the bid from Michigan Paving Materials, we would also ask for that sole sourcing, addendum to it. We will, once approved, we will bring back to you in March the actual contract for, approval and signature from Michigan Paving.
Questions on the plan? Commissioner Heiser.
Walk us through, Justin, 13A and 5EL, our construction standards, and when the 5EL went into our construction standards at that point.
Yes, so great question, and I have no other, answer for it than oversight. So when we reviewed our, construction standards recently in probably in the last 6 months, we brought that to you for approval. What we were mainly looking for in our construction standards was to upgrade and, tie in, if you notice around town, a lot of the areas where we had sewer, repairs and, mainly sewer repairs by contractors, we're getting a lot of sagging, we're having compaction issues, we're having issues with that asphalt. So we worked with Spicer, on that to mainly look at the other portions of it, but to mainly address how can we get a better patch and something that's gonna last. So the 5 was the hot mix that they had suggested we use for that small patch type. It was just simply an oversight. The 13A is what we have always used as, our spec for the street program or for the large paving areas of the street. So it's, the 13A is not any different. I'd be happy to go back and easily bring that back to you in March with the specifications. And I guess in hindsight, looking at that, I'm not comfortable with it being necessarily one. And painting ourselves into a corner. I think we could reword that to where it's, with that one, 13A or mixed approved by the city of St. John's.
Then my follow-up to that, Lansing Street that we're working on, we're just gonna do a 2-inch cut, not go down to the base, according to the capital improvement plan. But there is, so probably no engineer, but with all the gator cracking on that base is not sufficient just to take a 2-inch off. I'll listen to your opinion on that, but that roadway from 21, I'll say all the way to Townsend is heavily traveled, and we're basically just gonna do a 2-inch overlay on that and not really fix the base, according to the CIP and what we're gonna do to that road. But
Yes, you're correct. So the, from what we believe and from past, big experience from M21 to Park Street, is much like north from M21 to Railroad Street, there's concrete underneath there. It's a terrible way to do it. I don't know that we can ever afford to do it correctly. Asphalt over concrete with the thawing and melting, that obviously heats. But, our goal with that is to bring that down to the level of that concrete like we did on, Oakland Street, North Lansing Street, and then pave over there. I mean, I'm all for doing it correctly and doing that, but that's gonna come with a cost. It's not gonna be done within the budget that we get from the village program.
well, I understand that part of it, but if we're not fixing the base, we're not using our village dollars wisely and not fixing that for the life of potential. I mean, we could be shortening the life by not creating a good base to that road. Is that accurate?
To a point, I think doing something is better than doing nothing. Even if that's Twitch, and we've come a long way with working with the road commission with this, sealing those once they've been in, for a couple of years. So I think we're further in advanced. Obviously, I would absolutely love to go through every one of these streets and dig down the base and bring it up like it should be, but financially, it's just not viable.
Chad.
Yeah, this is an age-old question, and I will use the example of Jolly Road. We, in Lansing, we resurfaced that. I wanna say it was about 2006. And that road was shot. We milled down about 2.5 inches, and if you would have said, that's gonna last anything more than 3 or 4 years, I would have called you a lying, cheating thief. And 10 to 15 years, I think it was 12 or 13 years later, as I was leaving, it was a good fix. I would say that, the failures, because I happen to live on Lansing Street, so I drive it every day, are mostly indicative of where the road cuts were prior to, and therefore, indicative of the issues that, you know, Director Smith was referring to about patching or whatever, compaction issues. An indication of a base failure is a severe warping and rolling of the surface. I don't necessarily see that, there's been lots of snow on the road, but that would be indicative of a base failure, which is you kind of see this warping as you go down the street. what I see is a failure of the asphalt itself and just popping out. There's some craters over there, and they are generally in where these road cuts are. I will tell you that removal of a concrete base material would cost probably 4 to 6 times as much as what you're talking about a mill, would, if not more. It is so almost cost prohibitive with regards to the monies that we currently have with Act 51, and even in this case, the millage. It would probably eat up 2+ years worth of millage projects to be able to, you know, I'll say to reconstruct that roadway, which I think is, would we love to do that? I think Justin and I would go cartwheels over that. It's just being able to stretch those millage dollars as much and gain as much life as we can. And I think we're hopeful that with some deeper patches in areas where there is additional base failures, to be surgical in investing in those areas, because I think you're right. You know, just a standard 2-foot mill is not gonna do it in certain areas. We're gonna have to dig down in probably a half a dozen to a dozen areas and address more of that and do some paving and some density backfill in those areas. So I think that's an excellent question. And I think even looking at the mix that goes in there, you know, the 13A has a certain bearing capacity. We might even go into the C mixes, which is a little bit more coarse aggregate and capable of having higher percentage of commercial traffic. So that's another example of, you know, depending upon what road we're doing, we want certainly the public service director to be able to put in the right mix design that supports the traffic on that particular road, which we are redoing.
Commissioner Gursky.
Yeah, and just doing some quick research on asphalt places myself. I mean, I think that I get exactly what Commissioner Hyder is saying. And unfortunately, this is probably some of the additional conversations I'd love to have in the budget process of where we should be saving money to do these bigger projects. We shouldn't just be relying on Act 51 in the village. We need to be saving more money to do these things right down the road. But that said, unfortunately, we gotta do something. And it is what it is. So that's what we got.
So, talking about the mixes, is there any adjustments we need to do within a potential motion this evening? Knowing that the bids came back for just one type of mix.
I don't think you need to do anything, Mr. Mayor. I mean, if anything from, you know, the 13A mix is gonna be cheaper than your 5EL. Just from engineering that I've seen, you're looking at 130, 140 a ton for 5EL. That they're proposing this year on construction project, so.
Leave that to the, I mean, that, whatever Chad says, leave it to the discretion, but certainly is our conversation.
We need to look at our.
Certainly want to look at quality.
We need to look at our standards because, I mean, if you look at our standards now and, you know, you held a developer to the standards, they're gonna have to put in 5EL. I mean, but we're not adhering ourselves to that standard. So if we're gonna do 13A, then we should allow those individuals to do 13A also.
Yeah, we can bring that back in March, those changes, that's real simple.
We can bring this back in March, then, okay.
The changes to construction standards, we can bring those back.
Is there a time frame for these, Justin, that we're gonna work on these?
So we're gonna look at what we have, left, in the 24, 25 millage hours, if we can start on some of these prior to July 1st. If not, it'll be July 1. And I appreciate you looking at this and getting this in February, because obviously the earlier we can get on their books, the better we can. I hate to say it's gonna be a relaxed year, but it's gonna be a simpler year where I think we can knock a lot of this out. And my hope is that with the Park Street project and the Lansing from, M21 to Park Street, if we can work with Michigan Paving, especially if we go with a sole source, to knock off some mobilization charges and maybe some costs on the HMA to complete the paving at the Fantasy Forest and save us a considerable amount. Or I think it's a possible option for a sponsorship, opportunity with, Michigan Paving, knowing that they now are out to maybe 28, 29, if the commission approves, with a $800,000 to $850,000 contract, throughout this year. So it's a possible way to leverage, some definite cost savings on the, Fantasy Forest for the paving.
I'm glad you mentioned the sole source. You mentioned that going through and I was trying to recall and get a chance to look in my notes from last year is. We declined doing the sole source for multiple years. Was our reasoning because we didn't have enough bids at that time? What was our reasoning?
Yes, the reason, and it made every bit of sense in the world, I'll be the first to say, I maybe I don't agree with some, but I understand the point. We had a lot of MDOT projects that were coming off. So the 2 years prior, when we got bidding, there was a number of MDOT projects, mainly 69. And if you really look at their projects, they're falling off. So I think the goal from the commission at that point was to, let's see what one more year without all this, I hate to say gravy work, but the easy bidding on the MDOT project. So that was the goal, from the commission, was to look at that one more year. And then if we got a number of, because if you remember in 24, 25, we only received bids from, Reeve Riley and Michigan Paving. So we only received two, and I totally understand from your point, not being comfortable with a sole source with two. I think this year really showed
Quite a difference, yeah.
2, 4, 6, bids. So I think it was very competitive, to be honest with you.
That's what I recall, because we didn't have enough bids.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good. If there's no other comments, the suggestion coming forward is that the city commission approve the bid from Mid-Michigan Paving Materials Company to complete the 2025 street millage improvements and utilize Michigan Paving Materials as a sole source vendor through fiscal year 28-29 for all non-patch based paving operations and projects.
So
It's been moved. Is there support? It's been moved and supported. Questions on that motion? And this comes back to the next month as well, right?
yes, thank you.
Great,
And then the actual contract for signature will be in the consent agenda.
you got it. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is, the compost site proposal. Justin, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep this brief. This is just a 1,000-foot overview of this. Recently had a local contractor interested in, giving us a proposal to purchase that site to operate a, commercial compost site, at that, facility. We're kind of at a point where they don't want to move forward without the commission's interest. If the commission's a definite no, it's not something you're interested, they don't want to invest any more money or any more time into looking forward. So not necessarily anything that needs a formal motion, but if you wish to have me continue to work with them to kind of look at that, maybe look at having a real estate professional kind of do an appraisal on what that may be. Looking at it as we continue to look at cost savings, I think there's some definite advantage to the city to not operate that on our own. Our cost of that just continue to skyrocket. We don't have a great way to control what's actually comes from the city and what doesn't. We have a gate, but a lot of stuff gets snuck in there in that. So we continue cost with that to process that. Right now, we've got a large amount of compost that we're trying to, market somewhere to get rid of. Otherwise, it's a cost to us to, truck it and get it away. Through their proposal, which is not defined clearly, we would essentially, we would still have access to the site with a tipping fee, whether that be a monthly fee, whether that be a yearly fee, what that would be, I don't even know what those numbers are right now. They're just kind of looking for direction, if the city would even be interested in moving forward with looking at us even closer. If it's a no, then they don't wanna, spending more money. I think there's a number of, as everybody knows, Eagle just continues to find new things, and the compost, regulations of that are gonna become greater. Right now, it's a cost to us of, anywhere between $40,000 and $70,000 to $75,000 a year. It is a cost to us to operate that, and that includes the chipping of the brush that's there, and then the, screening of the compost. And then that kind of varies as to how much of that compost we need to get rid of, and excess piles there too. Another neat thing that the contractors propose is, that they wanna do some recycling of, incorporating that compost with like spoils that we would haul out from water main breaks, and projects like that, incorporate it to create topsoil. Right now, to get a gravel pit permit in there, I mean, it's really coming to a close in the state of Michigan, and our ability to get topsoil is not gonna be scraping it off, the top and producing it. I mean, we need to look at, they're really looking at ways to manufacture topsoil. So that's why they're interested in partnering with us. We can get them the clay and the soils to mix with the compost. So just a very general view of this. I don't have a ton of details, just looking to, if commission is interested in moving forward with some sort of a contract or process moving forward with it.
We have a question about, how much is actually produced? Think about the volume of the compost, and do we use any of that with any of our projects in any way, shape, or form? And how much is taken by residents?
So when it first started, it was huge. We had, if you remember the piles on Lansing Street by the water plant, it was major. It was, now we've introduced a number of, with the induction of Roundup, and I could get into a whole boring farmer, thing, but our weeds are becoming resistant to a lot of herbicides. So we're unable to kill those correctly. So now when we incorporate that compost, we're starting to get a lot of resilient weeds that come through that. So our demand has moved on. Like if you look at Hammond Farms, they incorporate it with other soils, and that's what makes it attractive. Currently, the chipping, so like when they chip the brush pile, part of the contract is the contractor then has, those are their chips. We don't have any use for those, they use it as a biomass. I think some of them color it for landscape supplies, but part of their contract is they actually own the chips in exchange for chipping that. Yeah, the compost, we do keep a fairly consistent pile at the Public Works by the leaf collection. It gets a little bit of use, and we do get some, but not nearly what we produce. And so currently we're working with some other contractors that are in that business to try to market ours. Even if we can give it to them and they eat the trucking, but right now it's pretty cost inhibitive for us.
I was just asking because I know that people use that. I was trying to think of what the value might be for residents to be able to access that from that point, but obviously not able to quantify that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick, I mean, 2 cents on that, does that, spend a lot of time out there as well, and I think I look at it from a liability standpoint, I think there's a significant liability just to its proximity to MDOT right of ways, and waterways. What's been done out there, I think there's depending on how, something was structured, it could be a viable benefit to the city to look at this. So structured, right? But it would all be based on the structure of the agreement.
I do have a question about the property out there and what we know about it. I know it was the dump, the city dump at one time, so do we know anything about the property, and are there any questions or concerns about as far as liability?
So,
Or is that a conversation we want, after you've done some research and we can talk?
yeah, and I think if you look at what's being proposed, if, I was gonna tell you that it was a housing development looking to, purchase that or something where the ground would actually be excavated, then yes, we're probably looking at an issue in, some initial meetings with Eagle on site, as long as the surface isn't necessarily disrupted, there's a lot of things that you can get by with. In the proposed site with the contractor, nothing's gonna get excavated.
Restricted use.
Yes, correct. And, to Vice Mayor Kersey's point with a major waterway, running through there, I think there's a major liability there for us, depending on how hard Eagle wanted to push, that may honestly make that program financially unviable for the city, at some point.
Let's get it proposed and see what they are.
Yeah, I think that gives you enough, we're open
Yeah.
to looking at it.
Yeah, we just wanna make sure, they just wanna make sure it wasn't a hard no.
Yep.
Before we invested any more time or money. So, yeah, we'll definitely bring, my goal is to have them, maybe April, May, meeting,
Absolutely.
come to the meeting with, some sort of proposal or a flyover, what they're looking to do. In the meantime, if commission doesn't mind, I'll work with a, commercial realtor to maybe kind of get an appraisal, on
Good
that
idea.
property.
Yeah.
Okay,
Be
great, thank you.
Thank you. We're down to city manager comments. How about that?
Commissioner Heiser, you can start the watch. I will try to be very brief and run through these quickly, but there are some very important topics. I know I beat you to it. You recall that the Benzinski and company provided a proposal between the city and the township to look at the agreements that are between us. In those discussions and debates and trying to figure out what would be best, Benzinski has revised their proposal and is proposing to do a kind of a $1,000 per meeting charge to meet individually with the city and then individually with the township to kind of go through this litmus testing of just double checking where we're at, the comfort levels, maybe some of the pitfalls before we get too far down the road. This certainly falls underneath, I think it was roughly $8,000 that the commission had authorized prior to. Just wanted to make sure, number one, that sounds like a great idea. And then also to perhaps suggest a special meeting between perhaps now and the next scheduled meeting, but we might not be able to fit that in. Next scheduled meeting with the township is March 11th at 5:30. I don't know if we can align schedules or if you'd like me to work with Clerk CV and sending around like a Google, kind of a Google poll on some dates. Just looking what the pleasure of the commission would be in this regard.
You're thinking we're not doing the March 11th then? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
You're looking for a substitute.
presumably there would be, I don't know if we meet on the 11th, if there'd really be any context or movement, with regards to that. Certainly, we can probably talk about things, but having this meeting first, I think would add a lot of meat to that meeting and moving us forward. So I could certainly talk to Supervisor Silm and maybe we perhaps use that date to, meet individually.
Us, that's what I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, I can certainly suggest that if that's what the commission would like and, then the township might be able to meet at their meeting.
Their meeting's what, the first Monday of the month?
Yeah, I
I
believe.
think they're the first or the second Monday of the
Second.
month, they're the second, so they would be on the 10th. They could do their meeting,
Yeah,
we could do ours on the 11th.
7 a.m.
7 AM? Works for me.
7 AM on March 11th.
Let's go 6.
6? That's fine. You want to do 6?
No, we're scheduled for 5:30 already, aren't we? Like,
Yes, so we can just, talk with Bingham to use that time slot for this meeting with Benzinski, is that what
that's what I'm offering up is it on your schedule already?
For the 11th?
For the 11th?
Got it on the calendar. Do you have one? Yeah, after Gene left, everything went away, so.
So what we're saying is we're just gonna pivot that meeting. Not add a joint, it won't be a joint meeting, we'll just use it as a meeting with Benzinski. Okay.
I can certainly, if you'd like just to reach out to
If you
Supervisor.
could,
Sill,
and
that-
see if the township can do theirs on the 10th, then we'd have the 11th. Both be done with that first phase.
Thank you. Second issue, just wanted to update the commission and I will be sending out a fire service agreement cost allocation letter that talks about some adjustments. I've provided briefings to the commission prior to. This is based on looking at several different components to try to do something that's firm, fair, and consistent. We looked at SEV population and runs, came up with a rough weighting of that. And then, we're planning to send these letters out to, our partners, that being Bingham, Bengal and Greenbush. There is, a very slight increase for Bengal, about a $12,000 increase for Greenbush, and a roughly $27,000 increase to Bingham. We did meet last fall, and they seemed, very comfortable with the way the agreements are right now and their service, and now the full-time chief. This kind of incorporates, those costs, noted that he split between two funds, both the general fund and then the rental housing inspection and code. So I think that's gonna be a win-win. Just thought I would mention that because, you're out and about and might get questions, with regards to that.
Follow up there, Chad. You talked with them about, additional costs on it. In that, the meetings you had with them, did you talk about a dollar amount, or did you just kind of give the general concept of cost allocation and spreading it more equitably?
We talked in generalities, but trying to understand that we all want to keep the relationship very positive. Want to take, some baby steps forward and tie in these rates with maybe a COLA for a couple of years and then reevaluate that. This also includes a small percentage of capital expenses in there for them to be able to do, not a large amount, just trying to keep the sand very comfortable in the sandbox, if I can use that metaphor. And that was all appreciated by our partners. And, not wanting to upset the apple cart and keep continuing this very good relationship.
Just asking because I want to get your sense of whether or not there might be a surprise and pushback with the numbers, or you think that.
I've spoken with Greenbush, they're fine with that, and I've also, spoken, with Bengal, via email. And then, Bingham was in the ballpark of where we had said that before, so I don't think it's gonna be any surprises.
Appreciate it.
Glad to move
Yes, sir. Wanted to update you briefly on a lawsuit that the city has. It's regarding a employee involved accident where the employees was designated to be at fault. The representing law firm of the plaintiff is Feiger, Kenny and Harrington. We're at the beginning stages of that. And I will keep you updated on that, but really it's exploratory stages and following, motions for information. As soon as there's some meat to that bone, and if there are any preliminary asks, obviously we'll go into somewhat of a closed session and we're gonna talk about that as we can in open session. Talked about fantasy forests. I just want to briefly state that we're looking at a rough groundbreaking, maybe in April-ish. So, stay tuned for that, but I just did want to mention that to you. That would be a really big event. I will keep you updated in my weekly updates, which I was hoping to get done tonight, but we're a little late, but I'm gonna work on that tomorrow. But I won't belabor the issue, but kind of mid-ish April, just so I can, begin to look at your calendars on that. Brief, Wilson Center update, we authorized a very small, $2,800 repair for the roof initially. When they were up there, they found a couple of other rips in the roofing. It is completely shot. Superior Services did a couple cores. So, we've already met with regards to the association and looked at the overall roof cost, which is about $433,000, which would be split 50-50. There was already some roofing costs that I had included in the preliminary estimates. I don't remember off the top of my head what those were. They were about $100-ish thousand. So, as that continues to be defined, I will update the commission, but I did want to mention that. There is also some dehumidification and some ice removal. There's approximately 2.5 inches of ice on the second floor of the Wilson Center because of all the leakage of the water. So we're gonna hire a contractor to take out the ice before it melts and further damages the facility, which I thought was a smart move, very cheaply. And then we will be preparing the Unit 1 bid as well as the common space bid, which we are responsible for issuing hopefully late April-ish. So just wanted to update you on that. We're continuing to press hard, but lots of things in the plate.
Internal damage, you said the water's frozen, no risk to the gym or.
That's what we've been monitoring. The gym has not been damaged, praise God, because as soon as that wood gets saturated, it's completely gone. There are some water damage on the inside of the auditorium. Most of it is removing the paint that we were gonna have to remove anyway. So, right now, obviously the ceiling tiles on the second floor are completely gone, and those are being removed as part of this, so I will save in the removal contract for the build out of the common space. So, I think we're preserving those areas, which was our main concern in sealing off the roof, because we need to dehumidify it in order to begin construction in the summer. And just very briefly, I know the commission was sent a letter from the CCLP, just noting that there's some responses being coordinated, and if there's any other comments or questions, individually, if commissioners want to talk, be more than happy to provide lots of detail, which I cannot provide here in an open meeting. So I just wanted to say that I know responses are being worked on, and I'm happy to discuss that at a time that's convenient for you. Lastly, and I think most excitingly, we had the meeting with the joint meeting with the school board. A lot of discussion was had with regards to communication. We've been working a lot with King Media, who's been doing a very good job of raising the bar with regards to social media, our outward presentation and our website, graphics and everything. And we had a serendipitous opportunity where we were approached by an individual who you may know, which is Russ Shelberg, who used to be with Fox 47. Has a lot of experience in the media and digital design, and was presented him with an opportunity in talking with the school district about having a shared position that would work on marketing and media relations, both in between our agencies and then also individually with our agencies. So it would be a shared position with that. And the good news is, with regards to our King contract, it would be ostensibly a wash with regards to our expenditures for general marketing and media relations, but we would be gaining approximately a little over 1,000 hours of work if you compared the number of hours. So just a tremendous opportunity for the city. I did meet with King early this afternoon and let them know what our plans are. And looking at the possibility of keeping a small contract for, when we may need to do more glitzy, more, a formal design process, but by far, 90+%, if not more, would be handled by Russell Shelburne, who will be starting here next week. And that shared collaboration and cooperation by sharing those costs with the school district makes us, kind of a win-win. And be happy to answer any questions that the commission has on that. I do have Russell's resume and the general job description, which were worked up, and happy to answer any questions about that, other exciting happenings in the city, and that concludes my report.
Is he a school employee or city?
City employee will be working with the school district to develop a contract for that. But the school said that would be easiest for us to be able to do that. I would say the school could not go all in on anything after July 1st. They were very confident of that. But if you look at our contract expressly with King and kind of the added stuff that we had done, emergency services, additional services related to, for example, the Wilson Center, Fantasy Forest, and all that stuff, I think this will certainly more than pay for it if that, if the school district doesn't or cannot, chooses not to continue this partnership. But I think with his skill sets, talent in this partnership, I have a good, hopeful feeling of that will be continued.
If I can add to that, it was shared with us in the Personnel Advisory Committee, and so we got the background on that. And just wanted to kind of put things into a context of when we originally, as a commission, had authorized an RFP to go out looking for a communication services contract. That the original intent was that we would try to identify some of those areas that need to be shored up internally. How could we modify some systems? How could we put some things in place that would eventually wean us off of that contract with King? It wasn't King, whoever it was going to be. But the intent was to be able to transition into us having responsibility for that work and controlling that work. So this is, consistent with our original intent. So it's, I think, in my estimation, a few years later than what we had originally envisioned. But I think we're on the right path with this. And I think, having him on call to be able to do the work that we need to have done pretty expeditiously, and be here and present all the time will be quite an improvement in what we're going to be able to get. Not that I'm dissatisfied with King, but just the fact that we're going to have a lot more opportunities here with the regular services being available.
I agree, Mr. Huffman, this, we said all along, this was the move we wanted to make, so, certainly pleased that we're making this move, with our intent all along. We've talked about that for a few years here, so. Yeah,
Well, an opportunity presents itself.
Absolutely.
With Russ being available, and also with, the school, being in a position, we're looking at a joint position of serendipity, I think.
Great partnership. Yeah, we'll hope the city can, or the school can continue as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Commissioner Gursky, we'll start with commission comments this way.
Let's be brief. Last, ambulance board meeting, we are doing an update to our articles of incorporation. Hopefully to have something, for this, board to ultimately review and provide comments back, in the next month or two. Probably the one most significant change would be, the change where the city would no longer get two, bodies on that board, and go to everybody having one. Because we are the only standout in that agreement. And that's kind of on the basis of future growth, assuming larger communities are coming into little context, and that could quickly spiral out of control. It's best to have everybody equal in that round for that service. So more to come on that, but there's anything else, that's all I got.
Just want to make a comment on that, with respect to us losing the seat, that really doesn't affect the most important decisions, which are the fiscal ones, because we as a commission vote collectively on those things, so, I think it's streamlining it a bit, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you know, obviously, there's never been an issue, at least that I've been aware of, or since I've been on that board for 5 years, it's never been an issue, and actually, I kind of brought it up, it would make sense in the thinking of the growth aspect, we are gonna have the ability to have an alternate, everybody's gonna have an alternate, so really, the people involved, they're still gonna be involved, and everybody should have one vote.
Commissioner Spicer.
Just a couple things, looking at the memo that we got. Chad, as the fire chief talk with the ambulance, we're doing a lot of assists with the ambulance and that, I mean, in the end, that drives up the cost. I mean, there was probably 10, 12 days that we were doing, or runs that we were doing for ambulance assist, so. You know, maybe there's a discussion to be had with him now, just inquire why we're having so many assists, and maybe.
I can answer some of that. But that's some of the protocols associated with the response to the medical world is, you know, they're supposed to allow, you know, come with assistant based on certain aspects, which I don't necessarily think I should say here, but they're supposed to use their discretion once they get there and they need assistance, and that's considered rescue runs. These other rural communities actually have some rescue folks that they subcontract with, to provide some of that ancillary benefits. I think, yeah, I don't disagree, I think some of it can be curbed, with some conversations, and maybe some of the conversations with chief would be beneficial, but, other communities have rescue.
Right, that's gonna say, a lot of people have the rescue side, it's just, you know, what we do in assistant, we're sending 9 guys.
Yeah.
At a time, is there?
Yeah, and that's where you could assign something different.
Where we could look at internally to help out that, and then just a couple things, stuff that we've done in the past, you know, when we get a chance to see some numbers. You know, with the ordinances we've done, such as adding concrete pads to trailers and all that, how many have we done or this is just a ordinance that we put on the books that has no enforcement done right now, so just.
How much we enforce.
Right, or how many people have complied with, not always enforced, there's, you know, good people in our community that will abide by the laws and come and I know the permit's free, so it's not, it's more just that, and then, well, just to follow up on education, how many people we educated on snow removal or the sidewalks, we talked about safe routes to school, we talked about enhancing our sidewalk system, but there is still places out there that education isn't there for snow removal. Just drive down Nancy Street, there was a handful of them, you know, and we talked about people walking to schools. That education needs to be out there, so probably just a shot to the enforcement that we need to be out quite a bit. I mean, now it's gonna be 45, 50, so it's all gonna melt away, but just on that side, so that's it.
I jumped in on other people's stuff already, so my comments are done. Other than thank you to stay out, especially when you have to come to meetings that run till 9 o'clock.
I'm going with that. I just want to recognize Congressman Barrett. We had a chance, Chad and myself, along with, the township, as well as some, DDA business leaders, to meet with Congressman Barrett. Just want to recognize him and his staff for visiting us in St. John's. I had an opportunity to talk about some infrastructure projects. Township, of course, certainly addressed the issue of water sewer and shared some of our progress there, but also had a good conversation about our silo property as was outlined today in our 5-year plan. So Congressman's office is open to looking at some financial assistance through a normal application process. So we will be doing that. Also just wanted to recognize, see Heather's still here, the DDA Had a meeting last week with the Main Street program, under MEDC. They're gonna be looking, a bit further at that, probably taking some initial steps to become a Main Street program. There's no, cost to this. If you continue to make progress, you have to join the National Association, which I think is $350 a year, but certainly members of the DDA were really thrilled. A lot of the pieces that they've been looking at, including just kind of a overall survey of what the needs truly are, where they need to focus. The Main Street program has a comprehensive program that steps you through a needs assessment, as well as starting to really identify infrastructure, really sell your downtown. I think you're gonna be hearing more about that. I just wanted to give you the heads up that they're taking some initial steps with that program. Also just wanted to mention, I know I've made this request of Chad, but just wanna make sure that all commissioners are getting the zoning minutes, planning and zoning minutes, zoning board of appeal minutes, and parks and rec minutes. I know we get the DDA minutes and the principal shopping district, but I haven't found them yet. I don't know, I'm looking around, does anyone? I know Chad, you kind of thought they were in our memo, and I looked at the last one, so I don't think we've done that, so just making that request that whether it's either through the commission, we get communications on our agenda, but I think it'd be great if we could just insert those into our commissioner packet. Yeah, commissioner would be a great place to do that.
And Mayor, if I can, another option which we might want to look at also is our new software coming to our website. But if it's the commission's pleasure to just add it to the.
Or a link, I even thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, so we'll certainly work with Clerk Stevie and see, how to package that most efficiently for the commission to have those at your fingertips.
Good. One last one, I just want to open this conversation for a later time, but we're talking about personnel advisory committee, our finance advisory. I think it also, while I know they're not public meetings, I think it might be a helpful step to just have some semblance of a draft memo that comes from them. It doesn't have to be formal minutes, but I think it just highlights so that, the rest of the commission sort of knows what occurred, what decisions, not decisions, but what directions were reached. So I know we're starting to do more with AI, and I think probably some opportunities we could do the same with those meetings. I'll leave it at that.
Motion to adjourn. Support.
It's been moved by Heiser, supported by Gursky. We adjourn. Questions on that motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
I have 4 hours.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. All right. I will, I'll give you a call on our follow-up then. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's do it.